Death from Abroad. Target Practice Mystery 6. Written by Nikki Haverstock. Narrated by the author. Chapter 1. I absently scratched behind Moo's gigantic Great Dane ears while typing up the final draft of my email to Orion at Westmount Anderson Industries headquarters. He expected the first draft of my proposal on the advancement of female archers to be in his email inbox first thing Monday morning, which was less than 12 hours away. AFA was our attempt to start to close the payout gap between professional male and female archers while invigorating our female customer base. It was a huge project, and I was in charge, with Orion being my direct supervisor. Moo perked up his ears and ran to the door a second before someone knocked. I opened the door and wasn't surprised to see Liam on the other side. "Hey, Moo. How you doing, buddy?" Liam kneeled down to see eye to eye with Moo, scratching his black and white fur and roughhousing a little. I leaned against the door to my apartment and watched. I had barely seen Liam since we had returned from the tournament in Vegas, where we had finally kissed. I had asked to keep our new relationship private for a while longer. The AFA project had absorbed every second I wasn't working at the Westmount Training Center for competitive shooting sports or grabbing some archery practice at the range. Liam and I had shared every meal we could, but there was a big difference between scarfing down a meal elbow to elbow with all your co-workers in the cafeteria and quiet time alone with Liam. He gave Moo one last scratch and stood up to face me. "How is AFA coming along?" I pushed off the doorframe to lean closer. "I'm almost done. I want to give it one last read through out loud, then I'll send it over to Orion. I know I promised I'd be done this afternoon, but I went with Jess to drop Mary off at the airport in Denver. The snow really slowed down the trip." Jess ran the elite archery program at the center, while Mary was my roommate and closest friend. It was her mother's 50th birthday this week, and Mary flew home to spend some time with her family. It was going to be lonely without her, but once this proposal was sent to Orion, I'd be free to spend lots of time with Liam. Liam reached out and squeezed my hand. "I want to talk to you before the Bordistan archery team arrives." "Oh? Why?" I smiled up at him. Maybe I had a few minutes to spare for him. We could hang out alone for once, and I could finish my proposal later. An involuntary yawn stifled my thoughts, sneaking up on me after a week of late nights and early mornings working on the AFA project before and after work. "It's no big deal, but Liam started to scoot Moo back into the room so he could enter when the heavy mechanisms of the fireproof door at the end of the hallway turned over. Walking through the door was Ivana, one of the archers from Bordistan that I had met at a recent tournament. Snow clung to her dark curly hair and covered the shoulders of her jacket. "Liam, there you are. Come help us." Her English was perfect, but carried the slightest tone of another language that I couldn't identify. Liam stepped back into the hall. "Hello, Ivana. This is Di. She works at the center." I waved a hand in greeting. "We met in Vegas. Nice to see you again." Her brows knit together. She gave me a bored look up and down before shrugging. "Did we? I meet so many people." She faced Liam. "You can help me with my luggage. Then we would like a tour of the facilities. Then you said we could watch a movie?" None of it was a question, and she waited at the door for Liam to comply. He watched her for a few seconds, showing no irritation or eagerness at her demands. "Liam," I called his attention back to me. "I only need another hour on this. I'll come find you the second I'm done." "See, your employee doesn't need you. Come." Ivana beckoned him to come, then turned and let the door slam behind her without waiting for him to agree. Liam stepped forward and brushed his lips against mine in far too brief of a kiss. "Text me. The snow's really coming down, and I don't want you wandering around out there, even with Moo." "I will." I closed the door behind me and leaned against it for a few seconds while rubbing behind Moo's giant velvety ears. A warm, pleasant tingle ran down to my toes, as it always did when Liam kissed me, which hadn't been often enough. Since we were keeping things discreet between us, there had been no public displays of affection, no matter how chaste. Though I had been long separated from my husband, the divorce was not quite finalized, though it was close. My ex, the snake, had been living with one of his floozies since I kicked him out when I caught him in flagrante on our kitchen table. The real salt in the wound was finding out that he was carrying on with several other women at the same time, including my supposed best friend. I blew out a sigh. That was a long time ago. Counseling and a move to Wyoming for a new job had moved all that to the farthest corner of my mind. Once the divorce was finalized, there would be nothing connecting me to those dark times. Come on, Moo. I have work to do. I stretched briefly before sitting down in front of my computer. The sooner I get this off to Orion, the sooner I can focus on Liam. Guess what, Moo? I pressed the send button on my email and stood up to stretch. It took a lot longer than expected, but I'm done. I danced around the room and checked my phone for messages. Moo lifted his head off the couch and let out a long yawn, not nearly as excited about my progress as I was. He smacked his lips a few times and hopped down to stretch into a literal downward-facing dog yoga pose. There was a message from Liam that he was joining the Bordistan team to watch a movie, but that was several hours ago. I typed up a quick message that I was done and was taking Moo outside for a few minutes. I grabbed a leash for Moo and slipped on tall snow boots and a jacket. Since we had a visiting team, I snapped the leash on Moo's collar. People seemed to find his waist-high head intimidating until they knew him, and I wanted to make sure that everyone felt safe. For the past few hours, I had been hearing the heavy slamming of doors as the Bordistan team opened, then let the doors to their rooms bang shut. They must have been assigned rooms in my wing of the dorm. I bounced down the hallway toward a back door that, besides me, mostly only the cleaning staff used. It was a discreet place for Moo to do his business out of sight so that I only had to clean up once every day or two. I mostly used it in the early morning or late at night when I wanted to stay inside and watch from the window. The door automatically locked, and I needed a key rather than the thin card that granted us access to the front door and the training center during normal business hours. I had been subtly hinting that a card access should be installed at the door as well, but it didn't seem as if it was a very high priority for anyone but Moo and me. I flipped the switch to turn on the light outside, then pushed the door to open it. Moo surged ahead, only to smack his face into the heavy metal door when something on the outside prevented it from swinging open. Sometimes the snow built up and blocked the entrance, and it had been dumping outside all evening. I pressed a shoulder into the door and pushed it open far enough to poke my head through the opening. Where I expected to see snow piled up against the door was actually a jacket, half buried in a pile of white flakes. Beyond the jacket was a pair of pants and boots. My eyebrows knotted up until I realized it was actually a person, face down, covered in a thin layer of snow. "Hold on! I'll come around and help you!" I jerked back and the door slammed. "Come on, Moo!" I pulled on his leash and jogged through the downstairs hallway, tears itching at the back of my eyes. Whoever was out there had a hand extended, and chips of green paint that matched the door were wedged under the close-clipped fingernails. The skin of the hand visible through the snow was blue and still. It could be too late already. I rounded the corner as a set of headlights pulled up into the loading area in front of the dorm, briefly blinding me. I pushed the door open, the wind blowing snow into my face. "Hey, Di, I'm delivering 2 archers to... Are you okay?" Brian, a local cop and frequent patron of the training center, called from the driver's side door of his cop car. "Someone's hurt." I stumbled on the slick cement as I raced out to his car. Relief flowed over me that he was here and could help. He fell into step next to me as we started to wade through the high snow to go around the building. "What happened?" I was already panting as I struggled to drag my legs through the snow, which had only reached my ankles a few days ago, but now was above my knees. I could have gone the long way through the parking lot to the center, then on the path that went behind the building, but in my haste to reach whoever was back there, I had chosen the direct path. I don't know. I was taking Moo out back to go potty at the back door of the dorm, and someone was blocking the door. Someone was on the ground, and I couldn't get it open. I wasn't explaining it well. "Calm down," Brian barked. His tone conveyed authority as he surged ahead in the snow. He had investigated several murders here, and he was ready to do it again. Moo bounced into me, knocking me sideways into the snow. Everything was pitch black as I lay face down in the snow for a few seconds. By the time I got myself standing again, Brian had already rounded the corner behind the building. I followed in the trail he had plowed through the snow, finding it slightly easier than forging my own. I sent up a silent prayer that whoever was back there was just cold and unconscious rather than deceased. I moved around to the back of the building, where the only light source was the single lamp I had flicked on. Brian was already kneeling in the pool of light next to whomever had been blocking the door. "Stay there!" I pulled Moo to my side, pressing him against my legs for warmth. He shivered slightly as his belly rested in the snow. A Great Dane's fur was sparse on their bellies, and Moo was no exception. Neither of us were particularly well suited to nights in the Wyoming winter. I hadn't suited up in my warmest gear since I hadn't planned to be outside for more than a minute. Brian was moving with deliberate haste as he uncovered and checked over the body. As he moved, red snow was unburied, creating a burst of color in the otherwise black and white winter scene. A scream behind me pierced the quiet scene. A woman in her 20s continued to scream until the man next to her pulled her into his chest. Brian had been talking into his walkie-talkie. "Get them out of here," he said to me. "But remember, no one can leave the center." "What did he say?" the man asked in a gravelly and heavily accented English. I gave Moo's leash the tiniest of tugs to bring his attention back to me. "We need to leave. Come on, I'll take you inside." The couple trudged ahead of me through the path Brian had made around the building from the parking lot. As we rounded the building, the snow blew diagonally into my eyes. The flakes clumped together and obscured my view of anything beyond 10 feet. Next to Brian's car was a pile of luggage, which the couple went to. She had tears running down her face. I extended a hand. "I'm Di. I live here. You're part of the Bordistan team?" The man shook my hand. "Yes, we were trying to find this place, but our car slipped off the road and got stuck. The police officer gave us a ride here. I'm Vlad, and that is Min." I wiped my card and propped open the door to the building. "You can bring your things in here to warm up." They spoke to each other quickly in a foreign language and started carrying in luggage, a mix of suitcases, backpacks, and hard-sided bow cases, while I called Jess. After a few rings, her phone picked up. After an extended yawn, she answered. "This better be good and not another murder. 2 of the Bordistan members just arrived, and can you just come over right now?" I would explain the rest of the situation when I knew what was happening. She groaned. "I'll be there in 10. Min and Vlad were still quietly talking to each other in a foreign language that reminded me of 80s Cold War villains. Min wiped away tears with the sleeve of her coat. I pulled out a tissue from a small packet I kept on the inside of my jacket and offered it to her. She gave me a tiny smile and used it to dab at her eyes. Vlad blew out a breath. "That was our coach." "You mean?" I gestured to the back of the building. He nodded and rubbed a hand across Min's back. "Yes. Where is the rest of the team? I must tell them that Coach Natasha is... Is she... I'm not sure." The slam of one of the unit's heavy front doors pulled my attention behind me. 3 males came out of a room, shouted something in a foreign language before a second and third door opened and closed. Now there were 7 individuals quickly speaking in a foreign language. Even without understanding the words, I could recognize Min's excited pointing and high-pitched quick words when she told the other about Coach Natasha outside. The others gasped and called out in explanations in reply. The flashes of red and blue lights reflected on the pale walls inside the building as an ambulance silently pulled up. A siren wailed in the distance, muffled by the heavy snow, heralding more emergency vehicles on the way. I stepped to the window as the paramedics raced from the vehicle and around the building. They must have received detailed instructions from Brian. Jess stepped around the vehicles, and I opened the door for her. "What is going on? Why is an ambulance here? Where did they run to? Is that a siren?" Jess's hair was loose, the dark curls framing her face and creating a wide, wild halo around her head. She pressed back one side that was encroaching on her face, but once she lowered her hand, the hair sprang back. Moo pushed up to her side, nosing at her hand with his face. She absently scratched behind his ear while waiting for my answer. I pulled her close and lowered my voice. "I tried to put Moo out the back door, and the door was blocked by a person. I ran outside right as Brian was arriving with 2 of the archers who had gotten their cars stuck in the snow. I told Brian and..." I trailed off deliberately. I didn't know if Natasha was dead, but the lack of paramedics returning to the ambulance with the gurney was more ominous as the seconds ticked by. Jess sighed. "Is she..." "I honestly don't know." She let out a deep sigh. "Do they know?" I nodded and pulled Moo in to pat his side. He leaned heavily into me, and I braced myself as he shifted his weight into my hip. "Yes, the 2 that came with Brian," I pointed to Min and Vlad, "followed me around the building and saw the lady while Brian was turning her over. They said it was Natasha, their coach." "Natasha Stoughton? Holy cow, I didn't make the connection before. She's been their national coach since Bordistan has been a country. She was out in the snow." I leaned in to whisper again. "She was face down. Her skin was blue. I don't think she was alive." I shivered. Min came over to me. "Excuse me, I need to lie down. Where do I get my room key?" I turned to Jess. "This is Min. Min, this is Jess. She runs the archery program here." Jess extended a hand in greeting. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here when you arrived. I thought they said you weren't coming." Min opened her mouth to answer, but Vlad came up behind her, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. She flinched as his fingers squeezed, his knuckles turning white. He drew her close and answered for her. "Can we get our room?" "I can get you keys in the morning. You'll be sharing a room with your teammates, so they can get you into your rooms for now. Min, you'll be with the 2 other women on your team. And you'll be with the men." From the group, a tall, handsome man stepped away, wagging a finger. No, 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 there is no room." Jess' eyebrows arched up. "There are 4 beds in that unit. Your team only ordered 1 unit for male archers and 1 for female." The housing facilities on site, with the exception of Jess and her husband's small house, were all the same. Each unit had a shared living room with a small kitchenette and 2 bedrooms with 2 small bathrooms. Employees and long-term residents were in units with 1 bed per bedroom, but short-term guests used the units with a bunk bed that fit 2 people per room to accommodate 4 per unit. We had never gotten close to filling all the units, but Jess had high hopes that this summer we could run enough camps between the archery side of the training facility and the firearm side to fill out the housing to capacity. "There is a mistake. I do not share rooms." His large, bushy eyebrows scrunched together, forming one black line of hair across his face. Shark, it's okay. Vlad can stay in mine. I'm the only one in there." Another man joined the angry eyebrow man. He turned to me. "Hello. Don't mind Shark. He's always like that. I'm Mikkel, one of the high-performance coaches." "For now," Shark muttered before returning to the huddled group of his teammates. Mikhail shook his head. "I apologize for him. He should not be rude to our hosts. Vlad and Shark do not get along." "Where is Natasha? They said that she slipped in the snow. I would like the athletes to go to bed, but they want to make sure she is okay first. And where is Ivana?" Jess looked at me and blew out a breath. A movement caught my attention. Brian was at the door and waved me over. I'll find out right now. I handed Moo's leash to Jess and stepped out into the crisp winter air. I pulled my jacket in tight around me. Well, he shook his head. She was gone long before you found her. I did my best just in case, but you know what's coming. We're going to need to interview everyone. He trailed off as he rubbed his neck. Why does it have to be snowing? Do you need me to go to my office and pull up the surveillance footage? I was in charge of all things computer related at the training center, which covered a wide variety of areas, including the cameras placed in and outside of the buildings. Though, given the heavy snowfall and limited visibility, I wondered if there would be much useful footage. If you give me the key, we can handle it. I doubt it'll help. In weather like this, the cameras are almost useless. Unless there happens to be one right over that door? His eyebrows rose hopefully. I shook my head and shivered when cold snow fell down the back of my jacket collar onto my bare neck. Sorry, but no. I think the one behind the building is pretty far away from the door. I haven't looked at the feed since the last time there was a murder. I will grab you my extra key card from my room. Thanks. He raised his hand in greeting as another police officer pulled up. I can't believe I used to wish work was more exciting. We'll need the conference room for interviews and... Wait, you know the drill. Why don't you come in and talk to Jess? I was shivering and cold to my core. Without waiting for an answer, I turned and went back into the building. I scooted up to Jess, taking Moo's leash from her hand and leaning in close. Natasha's dead. Jess groaned. Oh no. She paled. Why did you have to find her? I'm pretty sure they would have noticed their coach was missing, even if I didn't say anything. Fine, whatever. I'm old hat at this. We need to gather everyone up. She counted the group silently, then looked at the ceiling and counted on her fingers. Someone's missing. Where's Ivana? A girl from the group looked over. She wasn't in our room. A gust of cold wind whipped over my face. Brian was holding the door open as Ivana and Liam entered. She was hanging on Liam's arm and smiling up at him. I was in the building talking with Liam. It was wonderful to discuss when we were engaged. Chapter 2. I was pulled from sleep as my bed sagged and a heavy weight pressed into my left side. I shoved at it. Moo, scoot over. Upon hearing his name, a fuzzy face pressed up against the right side of my face, then licked from my chin to my hairline. Ew! I sat up and rubbed at my face. Minx laughed from the left edge of my bed and stood up. You thought I was your dog. What are you doing in here? I yawned and stretched. I had been up late and only crawled into bed a few hours ago. I was so mad that Liam hadn't told me about previously being engaged that I was sure I would be unable to sleep, but instead I had fallen asleep as soon as I hit the pillow. Hey, can I come in or is she naked? Tiger yelled from outside my room. I pulled the blanket up to cover my chest. I'm not naked, you perv. Tiger stuck his head in. Hubba, hubba, that bedhead sure works for you. He grabbed the chair from the desk and spun it around backwards to straddle. I rolled my eyes at his Lothario act. How'd you guys even get in here? Minx pulled a key card from her pocket. Mary left this in case of an emergency, and murder is totally an emergency. Give us all the details. Moo arched his back while bracing his feet against the wall. He pushed me over several inches in the bed before relaxing. I scratched behind his ear as he smacked his lips together. How did you guys hear about that? Tiger slapped his knees in an unrecognized rhythm. My room faces the parking lot, so I figured something was up when I saw the activity last night. Then Minx ran into me on the way to breakfast. Minx hopped up onto the bed next to me, balancing on the thin section of mattress left over from Moo and me. Mary messaged me to tell me about the murder and to say that I should check up on you. She cut her eyes over to Tiger, then back to me. I gave her a little nod. I hadn't straight out told her about Liam and me, but I was sure she had known if Mary hadn't flat out told her. We lived in the same building, worked together, trained together. She had to be dense not to notice. I had texted Mary some details, then immediately crashed. She had probably followed up with Minx. Tiger looked between us. What's going on? Why would you need to check up on Di? Minx and I giggled before I cleared my throat. Yes, there was another murder last night. It was the Bordistan National Coach. Her name was Natasha. How'd she die? Tiger tipped his chair forward, balancing on two legs. They said blunt force trauma to the head was the most likely cause, but nothing's official just yet. I went to take Moo out the back door by the trash to go potty and found Natasha blocking the door and buried in snow. Tiger checked his watch, then stood up and flipped the chair back under the desk. Di, you need to stop finding dead bodies. We have a big tournament coming up. Our first big outdoor tournament of the season. Plus, it counts toward our national and world rankings. This dead coach better not screw up my range time. I'm going to grab breakfast. Don't say anything like that in front of her team, Minx glared at him. Of course not. You coming, Minx? He paused at the doorway to my bedroom. I'll be 5 minutes behind you. She gave him a wave and waited until the front door to my unit slammed shut. Mary texted me and said that Ivana and Liam were engaged once. Did you know that? No, but didn't you? I was kind of thinking that everyone knew but me. I grumbled and pushed Minx off the bed so I could get up and get dressed. I had no idea. Neither did Mary. How long ago was it? I pulled out an outfit and went into the bathroom to get ready. No idea. I didn't get a chance to talk to him. He said he would explain everything today. I just can't believe it. I wiped a hand to smooth my wrinkled shirt, then washed my face. How could he have been engaged and never told me? I grabbed my toothbrush. Minx popped her head around the corner of the door jamb. Who cares? He was engaged. You were married. Things changed. My ex was a louse that I had left far behind, but Ivana was gorgeous and here. The minty tingle of toothpaste was waking me up and clearing my head. She looked at me in the mirror. Besides, you two aren't dating, are you? She waggled her eyebrows at me as I swiped mascara across my eyelashes. I rolled my eyes at her and finished up my light makeup. I had heard that the rest of the training center had a betting pool regarding when Liam and I would officially be a couple. I was spending a lot of time avoiding questions about us. Are you going to solve Natasha's murder? Can you do it without Mary? I scrunched up my lips and thought, that's a good question. She's the smart one. You know what? You're a pain in my butt. I gave her my sternest look. She laughed. You love me. But seriously, if you want to figure out how Natasha died, Mary said she was already starting her research and to call her after breakfast. She didn't want to wake you up since she knows you sleep with your phone alerts on. Thanks for passing on the message. I went back into my room to grab my phone and tossed off a quick note to Mary that I was up and had talked to Minx. I slapped my thigh and grabbed the leash off the hook on the wall. Come on, Moo. He bounced to my thigh, slamming into me and making me stumble a little. I opened the door, and standing in the hallway, a hand raised to knock, was Liam. Hey. He smiled at me, though there was a bit of tension around his eyes. Minx squeezed by and headed down the hallway. Morning, Liam. See you guys at breakfast. I avoided Liam's eyes for a second, making a fuss over stepping into the hallway and carefully closing the door without catching Moo's wildly waving tail. Were we in a place in our relationship where it was appropriate for me to just ask about Ivana? Was that immature, or should I try to play it cool and say nothing? I had never hidden that I was in the midst of a divorce, but I hadn't really discussed it either. Was it hypocritical to be concerned that he had been engaged at some point in the past? Want me to take Moo for a walk? Liam offered his hand. I passed over the leash as Moo danced all around the hall. I'll go with you. We were quiet as we made our way to the front door. The longer we were silent, the more awkward I felt. My palms were sweaty, and a knot of anxiety started to tighten in my chest. Maybe he wasn't talking because something had happened with Ivana? What if they made up? Maybe he wanted to tell me that he was going to date Ivana instead. What if they were engaged again? Liam opened the door and held it for me. The snow had stopped, but the sky was a solid mass of gray clouds. There were tracks throughout the parking lot in the deep snow, which covered every surface. I slipped a little on ice under the snow, and Liam caught me under the elbow and kept a strong hand on my arm as we walked across the parking lot toward an open area next to the training center. We were the only two people in the silent morning. Liam pulled me to a stop and turned me to him. I'm really sorry I didn't get to tell you about Ivana before she blurted it out. I nodded and kept my eye on Moo. That was a good start. Hey. He crouched down to make eye contact with me and smiled. I'm serious. I would have said something sooner, but I didn't want to waste the limited time we had together talking about another woman, especially since I was sure she would flake out on coming. I gave him my first genuine smile of the day, and a thrill went through me as the relief crossed his face. Fair enough. A noise pulled me around to see Ivana exiting the housing building. Even from a distance, her red-rimmed eyes were noticeable, as was her nose, rubbed red from either cold or, more likely, crying. She looked terrible. Shamefully, I pressed down the gloating pleasure that erupted in my chest. I focused on making sure Moo had the chance to do his business, which I would clean up, while Liam greeted Ivana. I gave her a hand wave and a tight smile, but didn't do any more. How are you holding up? Liam turned to me. Natasha was Ivana's personal coach since she started shooting archery. I nodded. I'm so sorry for your loss. Tears welled up and flowed down her face. She was so dear to me. I can't believe she's gone in this horrid, ugly place. She sobbed and pulled a tissue from her pocket. She rubbed her nose, then winced. The white tissue contrasted strongly with her red nose. Your police are so brutish. They do not understand us and will never find the killer. It was probably one of your American serial killers. She had just lost her beloved coach, so I refrained from reacting emotionally to her statements, and instead followed Moo around so he could sniff a bush. The police around here are very good. They've solved all the recent murders. Recent murders? If this training camp wasn't required, I never would have come, she shuddered. Di is being humble. She's the one who solved those murders. You'll solve Natasha's murder as well, right, Di? Ivana arched an eyebrow. Her? I resisted the urge to stomp my foot in frustration. Yes, I did, but usually my roommate helps me, but she's back home visiting her family. Ivana looked genuinely shocked. Interesting. She dragged a foot through the snow a few times, creating a mound, then stopped it down. Okay, I'll help you. I looked at Liam and raised an eyebrow in question. When he shrugged back at me, I turned to Ivana. Pardon? I'll help you investigate. I can be the Cagney to your Lacey. I wasn't sure what was more surprising, her suggestion that we investigate together, or her dated American reference. Cagney and Lacey? We get American television in Bordistan. Don't you know Cagney and Lacey? They are very popular. She leaned forward, lightly bouncing on her toes. So how do we find the killer? I don't know about... I started. Liam squeezed my shoulder. Di can show you the ropes. She's really smart. He smiled down at me, and all my protest died in my throat. Ivana followed me back to my room after breakfast. I'll shower and clean myself up, then come back here, yes? I tried to smile. Sure, that's fine. I really didn't want to investigate with her, especially when I noticed the way her eyes followed Liam during breakfast. I stepped inside and unclipped Moo's leash before flopping on the couch. Ivana had sat at a table with her teammates, where they ate in silence, but her eyes kept darting over to Liam. He had grabbed breakfast with a few visiting firearm instructors who were staying on site for a week-long advanced training course. He had stopped by my table to say he would be presenting all day, but would try to grab a few minutes to chat. Minx and Tiger took off work to train all day for the upcoming tournament. I was already formulating my excuse to Ivana based on how much work I had when Jess sat down next to me. "I've cleared your schedule so you can focus on Natasha's murder," she had whispered. "What? Are you serious?" "Yes, the Bordistan embassy is already getting involved, and people are trying to imply this is the training center's fault. We both know this is probably related to all the drama the team has been having. I've got to go." She had left before I could ask about the drama, but there was a better person to talk to if I wanted all the archery gossip. Sitting on my couch, I made room for Moo to crawl up next to me while I grabbed my phone and called Mary. After a few rings, Mary answered. "Finally! I've been dying to hear about what's going on. Mink said you're going to investigate without me." Her crestfallen voice came over the line. "News travels fast." I flopped back on the couch. I rushed to assure, "I don't want to find the killer without you, but I got backed into it." She giggled. "I'm giving you a hard time, but you're going to need my help. I've been doing research all morning." I chuckled. "You're the best, except you never told me that Liam was engaged to Ivana." Mary gasped. "I had no idea. When I got your message last night, I was totally shocked. I asked around, and it was years ago. I was like 10. "Oh, that explains why you didn't hear." A wave of relief washed over me. At least she hadn't known either. "I count on you to keep me up to date on all the important facts." "Barely anyone even remembers they were engaged, and no one knows why they broke up. What did Liam tell you?" I rolled over and sat up with a grunt. Embarrassment and melancholy rolled over me. Not only had I found out about Liam's ex-fiancée in front of a large group of people, I didn't know why he hadn't told me earlier. Was he hiding things? "Nothing so far. We only had a second to talk this morning before Ivana suggested that we investigate together." "Who? You and Liam? You and Ivana?" "Ivana." I banged my head softly on the wall behind the couch. "I said that I normally investigated with a partner, but you were gone. She volunteered to help me, and I really don't know what happened, but I guess I agreed. Natasha was her coach, and she's super upset." "Be careful. Ivana could be suspect number 1. The flipping of paper carried over the phone line. "No, Liam was with Ivana from the time Natasha left until well after the murder. He made sure to tell me at the omelet bar. Though if Ivana was the main murder suspect, that would have been a convenient way to get her away from Liam. I think she has eyes for him. You know what? Never mind. I don't want to think about that." Mary blew out a sigh. "Liam is crazy about you, and their engagement was a long, long time ago. Why don't I tell you what I was able to dig up about the Bordistan team, okay?" I grabbed my notebook. "Good idea. First off, promise me that you'll text me and keep me in the loop." "It's your mom's birthday week." "Trust me, there is plenty of time for me to do both. My aunts are coming into town any moment, and then the cousins. I can sneak a few minutes here and there. Let me tell you what I dug up today. I couldn't really do much searching online since the primary language in Bordistan is Russian, but I talked to a friend at the International Archery Organization who told me there have been major team problems for years." I doodled on the paper with my thick felt tip pen. "Anything in particular?" "Natasha has been the national coach forever. She was the coach. She kept pushing out younger coaches that disagreed with her or her coaching methods, and she had favorites. She would pour more time and money into certain athletes, then, when they did better, use that as justification to give them more resources. Ivana was her prized athlete." "Do you have any specifics?" I wrote the word favorites on my list. "Ivana was a favorite, and that was the only person they could remember for sure. She won a bronze medal at the Summer Games years ago, then went and was a model all over Europe and married a count or something. They divorced, and she is back shooting again in Bordistan, and Natasha was putting all her resources into her. There was some big drama recently on the team. A few people were poking around to see if they can get a clear version of what's going on. If I hear from them, I'll let you know. A doorbell rang, followed by a dog barking. My family's here. Remember, text me all the details. Bye! Moo had crawled into my lap to sniff at the phone, so I pushed him off and put my phone on the table. If Natasha was playing favorites, then anyone not on her favorite list could be a suspect. It could be a rivalry with the other coaches of the team. It was unlikely to be a staff member of our training center or a visiting firearm trainer, but it wouldn't hurt to keep an eye out in case there were other connections that I didn't know about. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. When I opened the door, Ivana swept into the room in head-to-toe, skin-tight black, from her knee-high boots to a black V-neck long-sleeve shirt and a black jacket over one arm. I dressed for the investigation. Ivana perched on the edge of a chair and pulled up a pair of binoculars from an oversized purse. Just in case. Moo went over to her to sniff her over, but Ivana leapt up and danced away. No, doggy, you'll get my pants dirty. She swiped imaginary hairs off her thighs. I don't think we'll need the binoculars. Why don't you start by telling me about Natasha? I patted the couch until Moo crawled up next to me with a sigh. Then I grabbed the notebook. Natasha, she pulled a tissue from her pocket and dabbed at the corner of her eyes, was such a gifted coach. She's been in charge of the national program since Bordistan gained their independence. She really took me under her wing when I took up archery. She was a role model. I needed to tread delicately. Did she have enemies? Ivana's eyes narrowed. She was a saint, brilliant, and... I held up my hand. I'm just saying that people might be jealous of her or wanted what she had. If she was the head coach, then she would have needed to make tough decisions from time to time. Oh, her face relaxed. I see. Yes, many people were jealous or upset with her. She didn't put up with slackers or people that didn't want to do the work the right way. What do you mean by the right way? I scratched a few notes. There is a right way to shoot archery, and that is what Natasha taught. Some archers didn't want to make the necessary changes. I see. Many of the archers at the center had long conversation about archery techniques and whether one such right way existed. Jess was the head coach of the center, but she was very flexible about allowing archers to try different things. It sounded like Natasha was the opposite. Did she clash with any of your teammates? Of course. So many of them are lazy or want to take shortcuts. That's probably half the team, but there's tension on every team. Anyone in particular? I had my pen ready to write down our list of suspects. She shrugged. I don't know. Everyone had issues. I don't pay a lot of attention. Can't we just go find the killer, look for blood or whatever? I stood up to gather a jacket, Moo's leash, and my extra shoes for walking around the training center, since my heavy-duty rubber boots were great for outside, but muggy and too hot for inside. I leave that to the police. I focus on who had a reason, an opportunity to kill. Your police can't do much right now. Some people from the Bordistan embassy are coming up, and we aren't supposed to talk to the police until then. She stood and carefully adjusted each piece of clothing. Brian was not going to be happy about that. Di, you and Liam are good friends, right? Yes. I was suspicious of where this was going. Is he dating anyone? I asked, and he wouldn't give me a straight yes or no. I gathered up my things. That's really his business. She waved a hand in the air. If he was dating anyone important, everyone would know. So either he's single or with someone disposable. A flare of anger welled up, which I tapped down, then tried to change the subject. Your English is very good. It's not your first language, is it? No, Russian is, but I am fluent in several languages. I lived all over Europe, modeling and doing charity work. Do you speak another language? I took a little French in high school, and I can order off any Mexican restaurant menu, I said with a laugh, then snapped Moo's leash on. She sniffed at me before looking at Moo. Is that dog going with us? Ivana pulled up her lips in disgust. His name is Moo, and yes, he goes with me everywhere. But what about... Moo comes. What is your team doing today? Are they training? I opened the front door and swept into the hallway, then closed the door behind us. Yes, but the schedule is a mess because of... The end of her sentence caught in her throat. Sympathy for her washed away, at least temporarily, my annoyance with her. It'll be okay. Chapter 3. The general common room at the center was used for eating meals, but was also a gathering place during the rest of the day for staff and visitors. The room had coffee available all day, and the tables and booths looked out over the snow-covered expanse of Wyoming. As we entered, a few tables had groups sharing coffee and talking quietly. I waved to employees I recognized and took a few minutes for everyone to greet Moo. Since this room was separate from the cafeteria, Moo was allowed in and enjoyed the chance to receive a variety of pets. Ivana gestured to a table at the far side of the room. Chevelle is sitting over there. Isn't Chevelle a French word? I would think your nicknames would be Russian. The International Archery Organization is based in France, so some of our archers picked French nicknames, some English. I don't need a nickname. Everyone knows me. She flicked her hair over her shoulder and headed for Chevelle's table near the coffee urns. Morning, Chevelle. This is Di. She works here. Ivana gestured casually to me. Hi. Chevelle looked up from her phone and gave me a small smile. I grabbed a cup and poured myself some coffee from the coffee table near where she was sitting. Can I get you some coffee as well? Yes. No. Make up your mind, Chevelle, Ivana snapped. Chevelle blushed. No, but thank you for asking. Ivana rolled her eyes. I leaned into Ivana as I poured cream into my coffee. Let me handle this. I took a sip of my drink, savoring the warm, caffeine-laden drink on a cold winter morning. The heady, roasted aroma tickled my nose as I pulled out a chair next to Chevelle and gave her a warm smile. If there is anything I can do to help, please let me know. Chevelle fidgeted with her phone. I can't get the internet to work. They gave us a password, but it isn't working. I can fix that. I held out my hand and she passed me the phone. After a few taps on the phone, the problem was apparent. Here's the problem. You selected the wrong Wi-Fi network. Let me just get the right one and enter the password. There. You're all hooked up. I passed the phone back to her and she smiled gratefully. Ivana blew out a sigh. I swear, Chevelle, how can anyone be so dense? I reared around on Ivana and glared. Perhaps you should go find your coaches and get a copy of today's schedule. I tried to convey with my eyes to go away. She narrowed her eyes at me in return. I don't think... Ivana? I dragged out her name slowly, like a warning. Fine. She slammed her cup of coffee down, spilling it over the edge before stomping across the room. Chevelle was reading on her phone, but the edges of a smile teased across her lips. Ivana sure is something. I only met her last night. I wanted to ease into the conversation and make it clear that we weren't great friends. Try traveling with her. She got a bronze medal at the Summer Games and married a count. She can work that into any fight. That must be annoying. Are you doing okay? I'm so sorry to hear about your coach. It was... Her cheeks turned red. She sat staring at her phone until she put it down. She was not my personal coach, but it is very sad. Ivana said that random murders are common here? Random murders? No. Around here, when there's a death, it is by someone they know and for a particular reason. I left the around here vague. Hopefully she would think I meant Wyoming or the U.S., rather than specifically the training center. I let the statement hang in the air for a while for her to consider. She twisted her phone around in her hands. Coach Natasha was difficult. A lot of people didn't like her. There are at least 2 people that couldn't have killed her, though. Oh? I didn't want to be pushy and was taking a relaxed approach. Min and Vlad showed up after Natasha was already gone. I didn't think that they were even coming until I saw them in the hallway last night. Coach Natasha made this camp a last-minute requirement. If you didn't show up, you were to be kicked off the team. She didn't even tell us directly. She posted online on our team page. When I found out, I texted the rest of the team. Most of them hadn't heard except for the ones that were close with Coach Natasha. Vlad was so mad. He sounded like he could... She stared out the window. Delicate flakes of snow, barely visible unless you looked across a distance, fell from the sky. Vlad was upset? Yes, very upset. Vlad and Min were training near our next tournament in Arizona. I only got a hold of them yesterday morning. Min was crying because she didn't think they could make it in time. Vlad was so angry. They hung up on me, and I kind of thought they weren't coming at all. Others were mad, but Vlad was... It doesn't matter, because Vlad and Min didn't arrive until it was too late. Who else was mad about it? If it was required, why didn't people know about it? I reached over and scratched behind Moo's ears. I don't want to speak ill of the dead. She stared across the window and seemed paler than she had been when I first sat down. I understand. I heard that she had a strong personality. I don't know what strong personality means. She turned to face me, her dark eyebrows knit together over her dark eyes. It's a way of saying she was, opinionated, forceful. It could mean that she was difficult to get along with for some people. A lot to deal with. It's an American way of saying all that without being critical. Yes, then she had a strong personality. She gave me a genuine smile. I don't know all your American phrases. I learned most of my English by watching TV. Your English is very good. What did you watch? I loved Baywatch and Cheers. Did you watch those? Yes, very good shows. I had seen both in reruns, and considering that she looked younger than me, it was clear that Bordistan wasn't getting our most recent TV shows. I sure hope that Sam and Diane get together. Chevelle's lips were so pale they blended into her skin. Are you feeling okay? I think I want to lie down. She stood up and listed slightly to the side. She grabbed at the back of the chair. Moo leaped to his feet and pushed against her while barking. Heads all around the room turned to watch. I stood and grabbed at her other arm. Here, sit down. I'm fine. She snapped at me, but allowed me to guide her back into the chair. Her eyes seemed unfocused. Moo whined and pressed against her. Let me get you some water. Do you need something to eat? A lot has happened in the past day. Did you get enough sleep? An instructor from the firearms side of the training center handed her a bottle of water as others hovered around, eager to help. She drank from the bottle, averting her eyes from the people around her. I didn't sleep well. That must be it. You need to rest. Ivana! I called out to Ivana as she entered from the hallway. Come here! Don't yell at me! Ivana slid through the group. What's wrong with her? I'm tired. Chevelle's voice carried a strained note as it cut through the chatter around her. The color was returning to her face, and pink rose in her cheeks and ears. I'm fine, I promise. I just need to lie down. Can we walk you back to your room? It's slippery outside, and my boss would kill me if you fell. Please? I gave her a bright smile. Okay. Thank you. Ivana shook the snow off her shoulders as we entered the training center after taking Chevelle back to her room. What a drama queen. She didn't look very well. Moo bounced into my side as I switched from my rubber snow boots back into athletic shoes, then stowed the boots into a line of shoes that the employees wore to work. It was a pain to switch constantly, but it was better than being chewed out by Jess for trailing water through the center. We headed down the wide hallway. She's been difficult this whole trip. One emotional, weepy mess. Maybe she attacked Coach Natasha in one of her crying fits she's been having. Ivana! Min gasped as she stepped from the bathroom, having caught Ivana's accusations. How could you say such a thing? Why are you two accusing Chevelle of anything? She glared at us. Min, don't you talk to me like that. Ivana put her fist on her hips and glared right back. I interjected, hoping to calm things down. Min, we weren't accusing Chevelle of anything. Ivana was just making a joke. A bad joke. Weren't you? I cocked my head at Ivana, silently begging her to go along. Ivana narrowed her eyes at Min. I was not joking. Someone killed my coach, and I will find out who. Your coach? Not for the last 10 years. You act like the golden child while you've been partying all over Europe, and the rest of us have been training and working. You just show up and think you're still the Countess of Bordistan Archery. You and your little American friends can't accuse us of hurting Coach. Tears were rolling down her face. Why are you crying? Ivana sneered at Min. Don't be such a baby. They started yelling at each other in what I assumed was Russian. Their voices echoed down the hallway as they spoke over each other, gesturing and pointing. I didn't need to know what they were saying to follow the argument. Min yelled and gestured, then Ivana gasped. Ivana lowered her voice, and the words tumbled out and ended with a hiss. Min blubbered and stared back before narrowing her eyes and screaming a reply. People were leaning into the hallway from the long-distance archery range. Somewhere in their yelling, I heard Liam's name mixed in among the foreign words and turned around. Ladies? They ignored me and kept arguing. It would be interesting if they were speaking in English. Ivana! I finally shouted when the two of them were 2 inches away and screaming at each other. Ivana turned to me slowly, turning her hate-filled glare onto me. What? I resisted the urge to flinch. Did you find out your team's schedule? Maybe you should go do that? Her nostrils flared, and she breathed heavily. Her eyes flicked past me down the hallway. Her demeanor shifted slightly in that moment. Yes, I'll do that. She swooped past me and headed down the hallway with purpose. I followed her progress to Liam, who was headed down the hall toward us, but too far away from me to do much more than wave. Min took a sharp breath in and slowly let it out. Is that Liam? Yes, that's him. Moo barked once and took off running down the hallway to join Liam. As he ran past Ivana, he bumped into her, causing her to stumble. Moo raced up to Liam, who kneeled down to scratch behind Moo's ears. When Ivana reached Liam, she started petting Moo as well. I watched Moo lean away slightly from her touch. Now would be the perfect time for one of Moo's gigantic, wet dog sneezes. That would drive her away from my 2 guys. Is that dog yours? Min came up next to me to watch the scene, the red, angry flush to her face disappearing. Kind of. He technically belongs to Liam, but Moo practically lives with me. Liam has to travel for work a lot, so Moo started sleeping at my place, and I never gave him back. During the day, Moo spends time with both of us. He has his run at the center. Liam waved from the far end of the hallway before turning around, with Ivana on one side and Moo on the other. He's very handsome. Yes, he is, I said before realizing that she was probably referring to Moo rather than Liam. My office is just down the hall. Do you want to come sit with me? I started edging my way toward my office, hoping to force her into following. She fell into step next to me. I don't know. You are friends with Ivana and... I wouldn't put it that way exactly. Liam asked me to help Ivana, but I only met her briefly a few times. Of course, Ivana gets all the help she wants. Min blew out a sigh. I unlocked my office. After Mim entered, I flipped on the light and closed the door for privacy. She gets her way a lot. I sat at my desk and passed over a box of tissues and a small mirror from one of my drawers. She's very... I searched for a word that wasn't too negative but would translate well. Spoiled, full of herself, a huge pain in the neck. Min ran a tissue under her eyes, carefully removing some eye makeup that had pooled there. I snorted with a surprised laughter. She sounds like a handful. Have you known her for a while? Mostly for the past year or so since she came back to Bordistan to compete again. I vaguely remember meeting her when she used to compete the first time. I used to watch her shoot when I went to watch my brother's competitions. She rolled her eyes. Your brother shot archery as well? She raised her eyebrows. Yes, Shark, he's here. I had no idea you two were related. I struggled to pull up a mental image of Shark, but only a unibrow came to mind. That's how I got my nickname. He's the big shark, and I started competing. They called me Little Minnow. Min stuck. She delicately blew her nose. So archery runs in the family? Yes. I've been around archery for as long as I can remember. When I was young, I had a poster of Ivana from the summer games. I used to want to be her when I grew up, except I would win the gold instead of bronze. She was a national hero. Then she went to Western Europe where she got married to some important man. It was all so romantic. I was really excited when she came back to Bordistan and started shooting again. Unfortunately, that didn't last. I looked around for Moo before remembering he wasn't with me. What happened when she came back? She immediately felt she deserved everything. All of the coach's attention, to make the team without earning her score, the best room, just... I know she was a big deal, but she hadn't shot in a decade, and a lot of us had worked really hard in the meantime. Did she get what she wanted? She got a lot of it, but not all. She acts like she and Coach Natasha were best friends, but they fought a lot. Ivana was a big deal for Bordistan, and she just took off for Europe. She ditched archery, her fiancé, her country. I didn't realize when I was a kid how much that affected Coach Natasha and the archery program in general. On one hand, Coach Natasha was thrilled to have her star back, but on the other... Min pursed her lips and stared out the window behind me, where the snow-capped mountains rose into the clouds. On the other hand, I prompted her. There was a... Sorry, I'm trying to think of the word in English. Like some things were awkward and then they would fight, but I didn't understand why. I see. I weighed my options for what to bring up next. Our conversation had been relaxed and comfortable, so I took a risk. Can I ask you what you and Ivana were fighting about in the hallway? A delicate pink flush crawled up her neck. I'm so embarrassed. We were worse than Crystal and Alexis Carrington. I stared at her blankly, trying to place the names. From the show Dynasty? I resisted the urge to smile. Yes, of course. And what was the fight about? She waved a hand and averted her eyes. You'll think badly of me. She started it. I softened my voice. She did. Why was she even talking about Chevelle killing Coach Natasha? A little steel snuck into her voice. I could make up a lie or go with the truth. It was a gamble to show too many of my cards, but I felt like it was a safer road. She wants to find out who killed her coach. Her coach? Coach Natasha was the team coach. Ivana was only out for herself. Who told you that she wanted to find the killer? It was Liam, right? Of course. She just wants to look like she has a heart in front of him. Oh? Was Ivana playing me? She is determined to win back Liam. She always gets what she wants. Coach Natasha and her have been fighting since Coach found out that Ivana had recommended coming here just so she could reconnect with Liam. The last thing Coach wanted was for Ivana to leave again when she was just getting good. Not that she was as great as she thought she was. That's what we were fighting about. Ivana thinks she is the best, even if her scores don't show it. She blew out a sigh. I'm just sick of her. Are your police good? I looked at her and blinked when my brain scrambled to file away what she had already shared and follow the new train of thought. Yes, they are very good. Why? I mean, they don't just jail anyone, right? She fidgeted a little, twisting the tissue in her hand into a tiny ball with white knuckles. Of course not. They won't just arrest someone because it's convenient. She was probably worried about police corruption. Perhaps that was a serious problem in Bordistan. She chewed at her nails. Her eyes darted around the room, landing on everything but me. Thanks for the tissue. I think I want to go back to my room for a bit. Oh, of course. It was nice chatting, and if you need anything, let me know. I gave her a wave as she got up to leave. After Min left, I jotted down some notes, then locked up my office and headed down the hallway to find Ivana. I waved to Minx and Tiger on the long-distance range, then peeked in to see the Bordistan coaches were working with a few of the male archers in the short range. The common room was empty except for Jess. Hey, Jess. I ducked in for a second. As I approached, I looked over my shoulder to make sure we were still alone. Did you know that Liam and Ivana were engaged? Yes. Didn't you know? One eyebrow arched in question. It never came up. I pulled out a chair across from her. Why didn't you mention it? I would have if I had thought about it, but we would have been in high school when it happened. I heard about it because they were engaged when she won the bronze medal at the Summer Games and hadn't really thought about it in years. I forgot about it like most of the things I learned in high school. I would have made sure to mention it if I had remembered sooner. Thanks. I was caught off guard. Did Liam say... She left the rest of the sentence hanging. He tried to talk to me yesterday, but I was finishing up my proposal for Orion and said I would talk to him later. If I'd known it was that kind of situation, I would have put off the proposal to talk to him. Did you finish the proposal for Orion? Jess's attention was laser focused. The proposed program was something that she was in strong support of. Sent it off last night. A cold, wet nose startled me as it pressed into the back of my arm. I turned to scratch Moo's ears. I cast a glance over my shoulder, and sure enough, Ivana was strolling across the room. I turned back to Jess and bit back the snarl I could feel on my lips. I was being petty. I couldn't be mad that she had been engaged to Liam, and I certainly shouldn't be mad that she called it off, but I could be annoyed with her attitude while here. I settled into annoyance and focused on Jess. When will you hear back? Jess held out a hand to Moo, who stepped over to receive a thorough petting from her as well. Ivana came up to the table. We should be finding the killer. I couldn't find you. The annoyance whipped up into anger again, and I wrestled it back. Ivana was certainly a test of anyone's patience. I stood and turned back to Jess. Orion said they are on a very tight time crunch, and he would be back to me very quickly. I'm not sure if that means they will have an answer or just want more info. I'll let you know when I hear from him. I raised a hand in farewell. Ivana weaved through the tables back to the hallway. I got the schedule. After lunch, I have to work with the coaches, so we need to solve this right now. I caught up to her side. These things take time. We turned in the hallway toward the entrance, with Moo trotting at my side. Liam said you're smart. Her tone carried more than a hint of doubt at the statement. Is that what you were discussing with him? You? No, of course not. I was proposing that I move into the center after the next tournament so I could train and spend more time with him. I stopped in shock. Ivana continued a few steps before stopping and looking back. Where are we going? I shook off her comment and focused on the present. I was following you. Do you have any new information? We can use my office to talk privately. Yes, that will work. It's right up here on the left. I grabbed the keys out of my pocket and Moo danced next to me. You were saying you might move here? Yes, if Liam and I are going to reconnect. I find getting a guy to fall for me works best when I'm nearby. Obviously, I said as I looked at her thin, svelte frame swathed in black. What did he say? He didn't seem interested. I just don't know what is up with him. Are you sure you don't know anything? I unlocked my office door and gave a non-committal shrug before closing the door behind us. What did you find out? Ivana sat in the chair at my desk, folding her long legs underneath her. It's about the coaches, Valerie and Mikhail. They've always been jealous, and I found out today that they are taking over for Coach Natasha. I sat opposite her, like a guest in my own office, while Moo crawled into his chair near the window and gave the cool glass a lick before settling in. That makes sense. They're already here, and I assume they were pretty high up in the organization. Valerie is, but Mikhail is on his way out. This was his last trip with the team. He had some fight with Coach Natasha, and she went over his head to get him removed. Wow. No idea what the fight was about? Something about the men's team and who would come on the trip. I honestly don't pay much attention because I don't really care. I already had my spot. It happened when I was finalizing my move from Europe. She pressed a lock of hair behind an ear and casually looked through the drawers of my desk before pulling out a marker and doodling on my desk calendar. What about the other coach? Valerie? My fingers itched to rip the marker out of her hand. She's a bit of a dead flounder. What? Oh, sorry, it's a Bordistan phrase. I forget you're limited in what you know way out here in the country. She bit off the word country as if it were an insult. It means she was boring, quiet, and just... She made a disgusted noise. But you said she was being promoted? Even boring people can have ambition. She looked me up and down. I suppose so. My face heated up, but before I could reply, a quick rap on the door, and the door pulling open pulled my attention around. Minx popped her head in the door. Sorry to interrupt, but do you want to go to lunch? Ivana snapped the lid on my marker and stood up. I must eat with my team. She breezed out the door, then let it slam into Minx. Ouch! Minx pushed the door open and rubbed her hip. You having fun with the terror of Bordistan? I let out a bark of surprised laughter and turned to Moo. Come on. I pointed out the door, and he dutifully pulled himself off the chair, stretching each leg, then shaking from his head down to the tip of his tail. She's really working my last nerve. She said she's thinking of moving here to the center to win back Liam. I faked a gagging noise while locking up my office, then we headed to the cafeteria. Tell her that Liam's your man and to stay away. Minx flipped her brassy red hair over her shoulder and gave Shark a little finger wave as he passed by her. I don't know what you're talking about. Minx arched an eyebrow before rolling her eyes. Sure, whatever. Play dumb. Speaking of dumb, I grabbed her arm and stopped her in the hallway as Shark and the rest of the Bordistan team headed farther down the hallway. Are you flirting with Shark? Yes. So what? She crossed her arms. Have you spoken to Logan recently? Logan and Minx had been flirting off and on for months, but at the recent Vegas tournament, she had told him she wasn't interested in him that way, which must have been a lie. She blushed and looked away. No, I texted him a few days ago and he didn't reply. Did you tell him the truth about how you feel? I asked gently. Minx jerked back to me, her eyes flashing. And how do I feel? You like him. He likes you. He's a nice guy. She snorted. He's not my type. And you're one to talk, princess. You're not dating Liam yet. I stared at her. Her eyes were slick with unshed tears, but her chin had a determined set. She drove me crazy, but we had each other's backs. I grabbed her elbow and dragged her to the cafeteria. Fine, we'll be idiots together. Chapter 4. After lunch was winding down, I reached over to Pet Moo, who was eyeing my mostly empty plate. The Bordistan team was eating at the far end of the room. They seemed to be having a quiet meal, and no one was screaming, "J'accuse!" So I turned my attention back to our lunch table. Minx finished off her hot dog. Chevelle's kind of rude. She practically fell backwards when I offered her the tongs at the deli meat part of the sandwich bar. Do they not have bologna in Bordistan? She bit into a rolled-up piece of uniform pink processed meat product before putting it on her plate next to an electric blue cupcake. Bologna is hardly health food. Maybe she just considers her body a temple rather than a garbage disposal, like some people. I teased her. She stuffed the entire cupcake in her mouth and gleefully talked around it. I don't know what you're talking about. Small flakes of chocolate cupcake fell across her chest, and cream cheese frosting was smeared all around her smile. Tiger grabbed his tray. Ugh, gross. He left to turn in his dirty dishes. Mink swallowed hard, her throat bulging around the dessert. Luckily, I don't care what you think, she called after him, waving a breadstick with a thick layer of butter at his retreating form. I chuckled and turned to Liam next to me. What are your afternoon plans? He picked up his tray. I have a few minutes. Do you want to walk Moo with me? Yes, very much, I said much louder and faster than intending to. I stood up and pushed the chair back into Moo, startling him. Moo spun around to bark loudly at the chair until the entire room was turning to stare. Minx rolled her eyes. Are you going to practice this afternoon, Di, or are you over archery? The three of us grabbed our trays and carried them to the drop-off point and continued down the hall toward the range and front door, away from prying eyes. Yes, I'm going to practice. Moo pranced along next to me in double time to our steps. His large furry frame bounced as he nimbly trotted along. His snout sniffed the air, and he let out little low growls of pleasure as he spun in place. As he twirled, his thick tail whacked me across the thigh. He had been bouncing around since he heard Liam suggest a walk. What about your little investigation? Mink stopped at the front of the long-distance range and pulled the door open. I think I need a little break. I'll see you soon. I narrowed my eyes at her, then cut them over to Liam. I tried to convey the message, and her knowing smile said she got it. My desire to not be around Ivana for a bit was nothing compared to my desire to be with Liam. Liam and I walked on to the entrance, where I switched to my outdoor boots, and Liam held out my jacket to me. Thank you for the jacket and for walking Moo with me. I smiled at him as we stepped out into the blindingly bright day. The noonday sun bore down and reflected off the snow, which covered every surface. The dark clouds were gone for the moment, though they loomed on the horizon. They were dark and heavy with moisture, ready to bury us in more snow. I put on the sunglasses I kept in the jacket pocket and followed Liam around the building to an open field where he unclipped Moo's leash. Moo raced off to the far side of the field before sliding to a stop and sending up a spray of snow. He reversed and ran back, flying past us and sending a kick of snow into the air. He would run like the wind for a few minutes before taking care of business and being done, but first he had to get all of his energy out. Liam reached out and grabbed my hand. Technically, you're helping me walk my dog, not the other way around. I laced my fingers through his and enjoyed the warm heat that soaked into my palm. Nope, he's my dog. He told me so. Oh? Liam stepped closer and grabbed my other hand and lifted it to brush his lips across my knuckles. How is your day going? I dropped his hand to scrub my face. Ivana's a real piece of work. Any chance she could have killed her coach? I peeked up to watch him carefully. He chuckled. Nope. She said she was moving here to win you back. He shook his head. She thinks I'm single. Red-hot anger at Ivana flared up, closely followed by intense frustration with Liam. You could have discouraged her, told her that you wouldn't take her back if she was the last person on Earth. I could have told her I was in a relationship, but you asked me not to say anything. This is all on you. He leaned down and gave me a thorough kiss. His lips were soft but firm against my mouth, warming me from the tip of my toes to my cheeks. His phone rang and he pulled away. He roughhoused with Moo while he listened to his phone. I blinked in the bright sun and regained my composure. Each kiss with him was burned into my memory as they sent me off balance. It wasn't normal to feel this over the moon from even the briefest of kisses. Liam flashed me a quick smile as he grunted a goodbye into his phone and tossed a handful of snow into the air for Moo to nip at. They need me inside, but I have a minute to tell you about my engagement. Oh, yes, please. He wadded up a ball of snow and threw it for Moo, who barked and chased it, only to have it disappear when it hit the ground. Moo sniffed and searched for the missing ball. I met her before the summer games when she was training in America. She was the only archer to qualify from her country that year and was sponsored by Anderson Archery. How long ago was that? The summer games had just been held 6 months ago and occurred every 4 years. A little over 12 years ago. We dated, got engaged, even though we were both pretty young. She went to compete at the summer games, won bronze, and we broke up. He wiped his hands off and turned to me as though he had finished an epic tale. And what? His eyebrows knit together. That was a terrible explanation. Why did you break up? Were you devastated? Have you seen her since? How long were you engaged? How did you break up? She became a big star, and I don't think the idea of settling down was appealing anymore. She sent the ring back with a short note. I was bummed, but got over it years ago, and I haven't seen her in person until Vegas. But none of that matters now. He reached over and wrapped me in a hug, giving me a kiss on my temple. They're waiting on me. We can talk more, and if you want her to back off, just tell her we're dating. I opened my mouth to squeeze out a few more questions, but my phone rang. Mary's name flashed on the screen. I'll catch you later, Liam. I called after him with a wave before answering my phone. Hey, Mary, I was about to call. I turned to face the winter sun, which, even at noon, wasn't directly overhead. I soaked in the warmth of the bright sun and snuggled deep into my thick winter jacket. I never imagined I could be comfortable standing out in the sun in the middle of winter, but I had adjusted to the Wyoming winter surprisingly well. What have you found out? Mary shouted into her phone over a din of voices. Not much other than Ivana is hideous. Where are you? I can barely hear you. I shouted into the phone, naturally matching her tone. The sound faded away into silence. Her breathing was loud through the receiver as she jogged until the noise stopped after the slamming of a car door. We're waiting for a table for lunch, but I'm outside now. Ivana is a pain? I groaned loudly into the phone and watched Moo as he sniffed around the bushes, looking for the perfect one to mark. She wants to move here to reconnect with Liam? Mary gasped. Did you tell her to back off? No. What could I say? That we aren't a couple, but she should stay away? If I said we were a couple, she will tell everyone, and I'm not ready to be official. Why? You know I support you and think you and Liam are perfect, but I don't understand why you're keeping it this big secret. I kicked the snow and Moo snapped at the flakes as they fell. I don't know how to explain it. I had thought I was in love before and married that man, and look how it ended. A rolling sensation of failure and regret flowed through me. I shoved all that away. I didn't need to worry about it yet. Maybe I was just being stupid, but I wasn't ready for everyone to know. Then there would be all these questions and this pressure to define things. But I knew I was crazy about Liam in a way that stretched out before me. I couldn't imagine a better match or ever loving anyone more. I blew out a raspberry. Have you learned anything more about the Bordistan team? Die, Mary said, dragging it out into a warning. We'll have a long girl talk when you get back. I promise. Maybe you can help talk some sense into me. Deal. Nothing new on my end. What about you? You did talk to people this morning, right? Yeah. I unzipped my jacket and pulled out my little notebook. You'll be so proud. I took notes. I have everyone's name. Besides Ivana, who Liam said has an airtight alibi, and Coach Natasha, who's dead, there are 2 other coaches, 2 female archers, and 4 male archers. But one of the men and one of the women didn't arrive yet when I found Coach Natasha. So that leaves, I balanced the phone on my shoulder as I counted, 6 suspects. You're investigating the 2 that came late and Ivana as well, though, right? Yes. I'm paying attention to everything that seems relevant. Want to hear what I have so far? I started walking through the snow, drawing a huge heart with my footprints. The wind was starting to kick up behind the training center. Dark clouds loomed ever closer. Yes, please, though you'll have to tell me again later since I have nothing to write this down on. Ivana had some conflicts with Coach Natasha, but nothing super specific. But Liam says she never left his side. She laughed. Hitman? Secret accomplice? There's gotta be a way to tie this to her. I chuckled. I suppose it's a possibility, but let's put her at the bottom of the list. Right above Ivana are Min and Vlad, who arrived with Brian right after I found the body. They crashed their car on the way here. They were late to arrive because they only found out the training camp was required the day before. They had to drive all the way up from Arizona. Apparently, Coach Natasha was doing that kind of thing all the time. Did she plan the camp at the last minute? No, and she did announce it, but in a sneaky way that not everyone found out about it immediately. It could be that she wanted them to miss it so she had an excuse to kick them off the team or something. Min and Ivana got into a huge fight in Russian in the middle of the hallway. I wish I could have understood them, but it was pretty obvious that they hate each other. Min was really emotional and said that Ivana wasn't as innocent as implied. She went on to say that Ivana and Natasha fought a lot. What else? Well, there are 2 other coaches, and there was friction between them and Natasha, but I haven't gotten any details yet. I also talked to Chevelle, another female archer. She was super upset, but so far I don't have any real motive other than the coach was really tough on anyone that wasn't a favorite. I'm not sure if she was a favorite or not. I doodled a question mark next to her name. I hadn't really accomplished much so far. I'm still getting a handle on who is who. 3 black SUVs following a police car appeared in the driveway from behind the farthest building. I watched as they slowly cruised down the road into the parking lot and parked in front of the center. Men and women in suits started to get out as Jess came out of the center to join them. What are you going to do next? Mary asked. I need to go shoot for a bit, but I'll keep my ears open. I'm thrilled to be here with my mom, but I hate that I'm not there to practice. I have the tournament in Arizona with you guys and all the collegiate tournaments coming up fast. We had discussed this repeatedly in the past few months. Between school, work at the training center, and trying to attend all the national and collegiate tournaments, it was stressing her out, even though the season had barely started. You know that no one will think less of you if you don't do the college tournaments. She groaned. I know you guys won't, but the other college students are really excited to go and want me to be there to compete with them. I've been talking up how fun they are and what a great growth experience it is to compete. I would feel like a hypocrite to bail on them. But if you went... It was my turn to groan. She had been bugging me to go with the team on their tournament. Be an extra driver and moral support. I knew most of the college team from their practices at the training center. They seemed to like me well enough. I'll think about it. Jess thinks it's a good idea. Okay, I'll really think about it. And I'm not just blowing you off. Brian was out of the police car and leaning against the hood. When he caught my eye, he waved me over. She squealed through the phone. You're the best! Our table is ready. Call me later. I shoved the phone into a pocket and clipped the leash on Moo before heading over. Hey, Brian, how is the investigation coming along? He blew out a raspberry and gave a big thumbs down. We're at a standstill. The footage from the surveillance cameras is a total bust. Nothing's visible through the snow. Then these penguins I escorted, he hooked a thumb toward the black SUVs, are from the Bordistan embassy, so we can't do any interviews until everyone figures out who can talk to whom. Or rather, the police can't talk to anyone. But you can. You ready to rat 'em out? I chuckled at our matching raspberries. It was certainly that kind of day. You want my help? Just keep your ears open and let me know what you find out. But kiddo, stay safe. He pushed off the hood and got into his car. I'll be back later with the car that the Russians crashed in the snow. They're from Bordistan, I hollered at him as he closed the door and drove away. Maybe it didn't matter where they were from since murder was common the world over. Moo danced by my side as we walked 70 meters down range to collect my arrows. I wanted to get a few more arrows in before I returned to my investigation. Luckily, Ivana was out of my hair for a while, practicing with her coaches on the short range while I was practicing on the long range. I pulled my arrows from the target mat and checked them over for cracks on the shaft or damaged fletching before sliding them in my quiver. Minx grabbed my arm as I turned away from the target. She flared her eyes wide and tipped her head back, giving me an excellent view up her nostrils. She puckered up her lips, then asked, "Does my makeup look okay?" "Sure, why?" I then followed her gaze to the shooting line where our bows were. The Bordistan men's team had arrived while we were downrange and were setting up their bows at the far end of the shooting line. "Seriously, Minx?" "It's the accent. It's like flirting with a James Bond villain." She waggled her perfectly plucked eyebrows at me and laughed. "Cut me some slack. I need something to entertain me. You have your murders. I have boys." I opened my mouth to point out that she could be flirting with Logan instead, but stopped. She could figure it out on her own. Then an idea came to me. We could combine our hobbies. See if Shark will talk about their coaches or the girls, but not Min. Min's his sister, and I doubt he will find that amusing. As we approached the shooting line, Shark came over to greet us by calling out, "Can we shoot with you?" Cheat, Matt, and Vlad were at the far end of the range and started shooting the second we crossed the line. "Absolutely," Minx purred at him, her hips swaying as she walked toward him. "Where's the rest of your team?" Shark started windmilling his arms and stretching them across his chest to warm up. The family resemblance to Min was apparent around the nose and mouth. Though I usually preferred men with 2 eyebrows, he wasn't unattractive. He jogged in place on his long, lean legs. "The coaches are working with the women." I pointed to Moo's bed, and Moo slowly approached, then circled it to lie down. "I'm sorry about your coach." He nodded at me. "Yes, it is sad." Minx batted her eyes at him and lowered her voice. "You're very brave. I would be scared if someone on my team was a killer." He stopped stretching and stared at her. "What? No, the people from the embassy said it was a homeless person." I cringed. "Shark, I'm sorry, but it's winter in Wyoming, miles from the nearest city. It wasn't a random stranger. It was probably someone that knew her and hated her." I watched his face carefully, checking for guilt. He stared ahead, his unibrow knit together in deep thought. "I hadn't—" "Yes, I see what you are saying." He turned to look at his teammates shooting at the other end of the range before turning back. "It wasn't me. I went to our room first and closed my bedroom door. I heard the front door open a few times, but it could have been Matt or Cheat." He cast a faintly derisive glance over his shoulder at his teammates again. I took a few steps over to a table surrounded with chairs. Minx and I sat down on one side of the table, and I scooted one chair in his direction. "I hear there was a lot of tension on the team." "What?" He grabbed the chair and sat opposite. I lowered my voice slightly. "A lot of fighting, and that Coach Natasha could be difficult to work with." Yes, she could be very difficult. Many people on the team didn't like her, but some did." He looked over at Minx and winked. "I'm the best archer on the team, so she liked me." Minx giggled and smiled. "Who didn't get along with her?" He hesitated and shrugged. I caught Minx's eyes and raised my eyebrow in request. She arched her back and leaned forward slightly. "I bet you know everything about everyone." He gave her a cocky smile. "Of course." He pulled his chair closer. "The biggest secret is that Mikhail is going to be replaced." I widened my eyes and leaned in a little. "I heard that. It was because of some fight he had with Coach Natasha?" He cast me a quick glance. "Yes, but I bet you didn't know who will be taking Mikhail's place." I shook my head. He smirked and turned back to Minx. "Coach Natasha's son. He's only 18 and completely useless. No way is he qualified to work with top-level athletes like me." Minx put the tips of her fingers on her chest, subtly emphasizing her cleavage. "I'm shocked. How could they expect an 18-year-old to be qualified to work with elite archers?" Shark ran his eyes over her chest. "That's what I told the organization when I found out, but they said they had to replace Mikhail because of all the trouble he was causing with Natasha. They were fighting a lot." Minx tipped her head to the side. "About?" Shark cast a glance over his shoulder before hunching over the table. "Cheat and Matt." Cheat like cheater, or is it a Russian word? I had been wondering what his name meant. Like the big cat, Cheetah. He was always the fastest runner during workouts. Cheat is the third-ranked male archer on our team, but when they announced the travel team, he wasn't on the list. Matt was on the list, and he's not even in the top 5 in Bordistan. Minx gasped. No. Yes. The women's team was the top 3, and Vlad and I are the top 2, but Matt was added. Natasha said that it wasn't a normal team where they would take the top, it was a, I don't know the English word, but like it would be for training to get them used to big competition. People were very, very upset. Except the people that don't train hard or suck. They like the idea that they could be bad and still go to international tournaments. He snorted in disgust. I leaned in. But Cheat is here. What happened? He shrugged. There was a lot of fighting behind closed doors. I know that afterwards is when Natasha pushed to get Mikhail removed as coach. You, he jabbed a finger in my direction, remind me of a lady on a TV show at home. She's nosy and has a name like the archery equipment. Bow? Arrow? I guessed. Fletch, that's it. Her last name is Fletcher. She lives in a little town. Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote? Yes, that's it. You are very much like her with all your questions. But much younger? I asked. No, I grumbled. Di is exactly like Jessica Fletcher, Minx chuckled at me. From across the range, Cheat yelled something in Russian. Shark yelled something back before standing up and facing us. I have to go practice. Later? He squeezed Minx's arm. Minx smiled. Of course. Bye. She gave him a little finger wave as he walked away. She watched him as he strolled across the range and flexed the muscles in his arms. He's so hot. I snorted. My phone started buzzing in my back pocket, and when I saw Orion's name on the screen, I excused myself. I'll be back to finish up practice. I dropped my quiver on the table and jogged out of the range and across the hall to my office as I answered. Hi, Orion. Is it a good time to chat? I have a few questions. I jingled the keys in the office door and ducked inside. Is this about the murder or the proposal? What murder? Did you have another? Orion's normally deep, smooth voice was raised in alarm. Yes, last night. Coach Natasha from Bordistan. I started to sit down when Moo's head popped up in the window into the hallway. He glared at me and barked once. I got up and let him in the door. Wow, I knew her, but not well. Let's talk business first, then I want to hear about this murder. I looked over the proposal this morning. And? Moo jumped up onto the blanket-covered chair in the corner of my office and arranged himself to stare at the window. He struggled to stuff his large behind into the chair, his front legs balancing on the arm. I only did a quick skim, but so far so good. I appreciate your attention to detail, but I did have a few questions. I let out a sigh of relief. Thank you, and what can I help you with? There were a few graphs about tournament growth that show overall season numbers that are compared over the years, but I would love to look at the individual tournament growth over those same years. Do you have that information? I grabbed a notebook and frantically started scribbling notes. Yes, I do, but not as charts. I have them for the indoor season across the different organizations, outdoor target, outdoor field, and 3D tournaments. It took me all week to wrestle the numbers together from the internet. Would you like me to make any particular charts? Do you have all the numbers in one place already? Yes, they're arranged in a spreadsheet. I jiggled my mouse to wake up the computer. Everything was online in a drive I could access from the office or my laptop I kept in my home. Just send that over, and there's a few other charts I'd love to see more of. He rattled off a few other numbers he would like to see, and I answered any outstanding questions. When he was done, I tested the waters. So once you look those all over, I should expect a formal announcement of the new and awesome program I've designed? He chuckled. Nothing is decided yet, but I can say that you've done a wonderful job pulling this together in a week. No matter what is decided, you should be proud. And Mary helped as well. Tell her the same. I smiled broadly, knowing he couldn't see it. I thought he was crazy about her, but he had said that they should just be friends. Between him and Mary, Minx and Logan, Liam and me, we needed some couples counseling. I will tell her when she returns. Where is she? She went home for the week to celebrate her mother's 50th birthday. You could give her a call on her cell and tell her yourself. She did a great job, and there is no way I could have done it without her. Sure, maybe I'll do that. An awkward silence filled the line between us, and I imagined him weighing the options of talking to her against the fact that they hadn't been speaking. So tell me about the murder. I helped arrange a bunch of sponsorships for Bordistan National team members. Did you know Coach Natasha well? I pulled out my investigation notebook. A little, but I mostly dealt with the assistant coach, Valerie. She handled all the equipment requests. She's here as well. So are Mikhail, another coach, and 7 team members. Last night, after I emailed over the proposal, I took Moo outside and found Coach Natasha dead in the snow. Orion sucked air in between his teeth. I guess they don't know who did it, or you would have said so. How is Ivana taking this? She roped me into trying to find the murderer. Did you know that Ivana was engaged to Liam? Of course, we were roommates at the time. Any chance she could be the killer? He asked with a hopeful tone. No, and trust me, I tried to find a way, but Liam said she was by his side from the time Coach Natasha left the group until they found out that she had been killed. Hitman? He suggested. I laughed. That was Mary's idea too. Great minds think alike. I haven't been a fan of her since she dumped Liam. He was wonderful to her, and the second she got a bit of attention, she dropped him without a second thought. Didn't even have the guts to do it in person. I mean, it was best for the long term, but only because she's so awful. I smiled at Orion's opinion of Ivana. She suggested she should move here to win back Liam. You need to shut that down. I don't care how, but that devil woman needs to leave, even if that means framing her for murder. He chuckled at his joke. Don't worry, I'll figure out something. What can you tell me about Valerie? I placed a colon next to her name in my notebook, ready to record his thoughts. Smart, good coach. Her dad is their national archery organization president or CEO. I'm not sure how things work over there. She was a great youth archer and competed into her early 20s, then moved over to the coaching side. That's when I met her, about 5 to 6 years ago. How did she feel about Coach Natasha? Any drama there? Orion was quiet for so long that I wondered if we had been disconnected, but then he spoke. There was something weird going on. Give me a second. A long sigh came over the line. You won't repeat this, will you? I won't say anything to Ivana or the Bordistan team, but could I tell Mary and Brian? You know Brian. He's investigating the murder, but can't do much because the Bordistan embassy people are here. But I said I would pass on whatever I found. You can tell Mary, obviously, but try to leave out the details when you talk to Brian, okay? No problem, Orion. Valerie's dad runs the Bordistan Archery Organization and has for years, as long as Natasha's been head coach. When Valerie became assistant head coach, she arranged to come to Utah with a group of archers to learn all about the equipment Westmount would provide for the team members. This was before she was married, and we got to be pretty close, though nothing ever happened. She told me, in private, that working with Natasha was going to be difficult. I assumed it was a general personality conflict until I talked to a few other coaches. Pretty close, eh? He chuckled. What can I say? I'm irresistible. Toward the end of the trip, they took out a bunch of us for a night on the town. I don't know if it's just Bordistan archers or Bordistans in general, but boy, can they drink. We ended up back at my place. Most everyone crashed on any flat surface. One of the older coaches that knew all the dirt started chatting with me out by the pool. He shared a theory on why Coach Natasha was able to hold on to her position for so long. I waited for him to continue, and when he didn't, I couldn't hold back. You're killing me. What did he say? You have to understand there was a lot of subtext. He said he was pretty sure Natasha had some dirt on Valerie's dad that kept her in power. I'm not sure what exactly, though. I guess that he had a mistress, and this coach just laughed. He said, "Who doesn't? But some things are more acceptable than others." Then stared at me like the answer was obvious. An affair with a man, then? Underage girls? Maybe someone married or several someones? Did you ever find out what he was implying? I don't know, and I didn't ask, but I definitely got the impression that it was someone out of the ordinary and career-ending. It wasn't my business, though. He went on to tell me how difficult Natasha was and a variety of stories about her running off archers that she didn't like. There are a lot of subtle ways for a coach to undermine athletes they don't like. Not get them the resources they need, dig at their confidence with little comments here and there, make sure their target placement is far away from their support group, last choice in equipment selection, little manipulative things that can make it harder for them to succeed, but are hard to prove it was on purpose. That sucks. Did you ever ask Valerie about her dad? Yes, and that did not go well. I tried to be casual, but the second I mentioned her dad, her whole attitude changed. I swear the room got 10 degrees colder, and she just shut off. We never talked about anything other than business after that. Wow, is she still like that? Nah, after she left, we went back to being casually friendly, but I never mentioned her dad or Natasha again. But you can see why I don't want you to repeat any of this. I don't know if Natasha was blackmailing anyone, and I don't know why. Hey, it was good to chat with you, but can you send over that information ASAP? I grabbed the list of what he requested. I'll do it right now. Talk to you later, Orion. Chapter 5. It took some time to gather up all the information, double-check that all of it was clearly labeled, and send it over to Orion. As I locked up my office and walked back into the range, I wondered if Coach Natasha had actually blackmailed anyone else. That would explain why she held such a high-level position if she was so difficult to work with. I let Moo enter the range first, then followed him in. Die, Minx called out from the line. I'm right in the middle of a scoring round. Could you show Vlad where we keep the superglue? No problem. I waved him over to follow me to a door in the corner of the range near the door I had entered. I used my key to unlock it, then flipped on the lights as Moo trotted around the room to sniff and inspect all the smells. I pulled out the superglue and handed it to Vlad as he entered the room. Thank you. Do you have, like to melt? He flicked his thumb over an imaginary lighter. Sure. I pulled out a lighter and passed it over. He moved the lighter to the serving string. When the flame hit the loose end, the string melted, balled up, and raced back to the bowstring, where he pressed the metal on the head of the lighter against the molten blob to press it into the string and seal the end. I saw you talking to Shark. You should be careful. He's not what he seems. Really? What's he like? He uncapped the glue and let a drop fall onto the string, then deftly rubbed it in with his fingers. He thinks he is so cool. What do you call them here? Mafioso? He gambles, does drugs, and runs with a group of gangsters, but he is not so tough. He does it to impress the ladies. He sneered in disgust. Isn't he worried about drug tests? Archers were often subjected to drug tests at international and national tournaments. He knows what he can take and when and not get caught. He thinks he is much better than everyone. Coach Natasha covered for him. He blew on the string and tapped a finger on the glue to see if it was still tacky. How? I checked over my shoulder to see that we were still alone. She lets him know when random drug tests are coming up and did something with his gambling debts. I'm not sure if she paid them off or what. Wow. National archery coach must pay a lot better in Bordistan than here. No, her husband is important man in military supplies. They have a great deal of money. Whatever she did, he no longer had those men bothering him. She really held that over him after that. When was that? A year ago. I have to go practice. He grabbed his bow and started to leave. I stepped in front of him. Oh, but I hear that everyone had a problem with Coach Natasha. He chuckled. Yes, of course, except her little lapdog Matt. Even you? He shrugged. She was pushy, but we stay out of each other's way. But she didn't tell you about this camp. He tilted his head to the side. What do you mean? I thought she didn't tell you and Min about this camp, and it was required, so if you didn't show up... I fidgeted nervously and could feel a hot blush across my face. We are here, but you think that we shouldn't be? No, that is not what I meant. I'm sorry. Who is saying this about me? I'm one of the best archers and earned the right to be here. His voice was steadily rising. I misunderstood. Ivana said, Ivana! He snorted in disgust. She is a witch and a lying... He bit off a few words in Russian. I may not have known the definition of those words, but I recognized the tone. Moo came to stand in front of me. I held up my hands. I'm really sorry. I must have misheard or misunderstood. Moo fidgeted and let out a low growl that vibrated in his chest where it pressed into my leg. Vlad held my eyes for a few seconds before nodding curtly, accepting my words. A male voice behind me said, Excuse me, can I use some glue? I turned around and was relieved to see Matt at the doorway. Yes, please come in. Vlad exited, bumping into Matt as he passed. Vlad snarled after the contact. Matt flinched and pulled away. It's over here. We have whatever you need. Fletching glue, tape, acetone, extra serving string. I was babbling as I gestured around the room, hoping my embarrassment would fade away. Moo trotted next to me, leaning into my side as I moved and knocking me off balance. Vlad's a real jerk. I swung around to face him. What? I heard him. He's always like that. It's why Coach Natasha didn't like him. Matt picked up the glue and put a little dab on a loose piece of fletching tape on his arrow. So she did have issues with him. He nodded. Most of the team does. He carefully checked each arrow and pulled 4 more for repairs. He had big brown eyes with long lashes and a baby face. He was not ruggedly handsome like Liam, and he didn't have the bad boy vibe of Shark. But he had a certain boyish charm that I could feel across the room. He hadn't originally been chosen for the team, and I needed to find out more about that. Is this your first time in America? Yes, my first international team. I've never left Bordistan, but Coach Natasha said it would be okay. She was wrong. He sniffled a little and turned away slightly. I'm so sorry. This must be difficult. Very. She was a wonderful coach. She really believed in me. She said that I was a natural talent. I'd only been shooting for a year and was already in the top 10 in Bordistan. I gasped. Wow, that is very impressive. You're ranked 10th then? Yes, that is why Coach Natasha pushed for me to travel as training for the future. She really felt I was the next big thing. The last word caught in his throat. I brought over a tissue, and when I offered it, he threw himself into my arms and started sobbing on my shoulder. I awkwardly patted his shoulder. There, it'll be okay. The spicy scent of his cologne filled my nose, and suddenly I felt that he was far closer than really proper. Here, let me get you another tissue. I gently peeled away and passed him another tissue over the string jig in the middle of the room, so he couldn't wrap his arms around me again. You two were very close. She was like a mother to you? He shuddered. Not a mother. Nothing like that. She really understood and believed in me. She was strong and powerful, like Xena, the warrior princess. That is why it was so mean when Cheat tried to keep me off the team. I had earned the spot by having the most improved score and rising so quickly through the ranks. He's been on plenty of trips. It was my turn. I nodded along as if he totally had a point, though I actually didn't agree. I even managed to hold back my snort at the idea that Natasha had been anything like the statuesque and muscular Xena. If they don't train the next group, then the top guys will always be the top guys. It's not fair. They obviously agreed because you are here. I aimed for a cheery tone rather than the irritation I felt from his continued whining. Yeah, but so is Cheat. How did that happen? He was such a baby about it. Like, just accept that the coach wanted someone with more talent to go. Cheat brought in a lawyer and got Mikhail on his side, the traitor. They should have fired him right there for going against Tosh. Coach Natasha. He's such a worm. I can't believe they let him come along and be a coach. But they let you come anyways? I earned it. Coach Natasha stuck up for me and they had already bought all my tickets. He turned away to finish his arrows while muttering under his breath. I deserved it. She said so. His thin voice cracked. I'm really sorry about your coach. If there's anything I can... Die! Ivana screamed as she entered the room. Holy cannoli, Ivana, I said, turning to her. No need to yell like, you like Liam. How could... Whoa, hold on. This is a private conversation? I pushed past her into the range where everyone else was turned to face us. Inside the range and only a few feet away was the intercom room, which they used during tournaments to make announcements in the range and throughout the building. But the most important feature was that it was soundproof. We can talk in here. I unlocked the door and shut it firmly behind us. I was talking to some of the employees, and they said that you and Liam are an item. You lied to me. She stomped around the room, throwing her arms up and down. Moo arranged himself between us and leaned back against my legs. I didn't lie to you. What Liam and I are to each other is none of your or anyone's business. Liam is not officially dating anyone. My stomach twisted at my choice of words. It wasn't right for me to act like I wasn't crazy about him. Liar! They said you two are inseparable, that you own Moo together. How could you do this to me? To you? What does this have to do with you? My face heated up with anger, and I slammed a hand down on the counter, a sharp corner digging into my hand, but I was too angry to care. I clenched my stinging hand and faced her. You had your chance with him, and you threw it away a long, long time ago. I love him. We're meant to be together, she wailed, tears running down her face, and still looking incredibly model beautiful. That made me even madder. If she was going to cry, she should be puffy-faced with red-rimmed eyes instead of looking like a heroine in a romantic movie. My voice came out louder than intended. It's been a decade. You don't know him anymore. You just want him for his money, she yelled at me from a foot away. You're an idiot if you think all he has to offer is money. He's handsome, kind, funny, smart, and a great kisser. Besides, I have my own money and... A door behind me slammed open, and I whipped around. What? My own voice echoed in from the range through the open door. I gasped as Mink pointed at the counter with a smirk. You hit the intercom button, so you and Liam are official now, princess. My elbows were on my knees, and I buried my face in my hands. I can't believe I announced that Liam was a great kisser to the entire training center. Moo wedged his hand under my arm and licked my face while whining and pawing at my leg. He didn't understand my embarrassment and was distressed. Minx chuckled at my side. It was pretty hilarious. I wanted to be hiding out at my room for the next 5 years, but Minx convinced me to go to the common room and take the ribbing I deserved. I had been there for at least 30 minutes, and several coworkers had come by to congratulate me and share some snarky remarks. If I could just get through dinner, I could run away and never show my face again. Die! What was that all about? Jess's voice cut through the room. I raised my head cautiously. What are you talking about? I could play innocent. Don't even try that. I was talking to Elizabeth Anderson when your announcement interrupted us. I groaned again. Tell me she didn't hear anything, please. She heard all of it, and thankfully, she just chuckled. But it was very unprofessional of you. Why did you do it? You don't think I did that on purpose, do you? Jess faltered before continuing. I guess not. But seriously, can't you be more careful? I will never use that room again. From the entrance of the common room, Tiger's voice rang out. There's my favorite person. Do me a favor and tell these guys you didn't do that on purpose. I turned around, and Tiger was trotting into the room with a group of firearm instructors following behind. You mean the most embarrassing event in my life? No, I didn't do that on purpose. Tiger gave me a half smile. Even more embarrassing than walking in on your husband and... I cut him off before he could drag up the whole sordid story about me catching my husband in the kitchen with another woman on my birthday. Yes, because this time it was my fault, and he's not my husband. He's my very soon-to-be ex-husband. Thank you very much. Tiger chuckled and turned to the guys with him. Pay up. Jess furrowed her eyebrows. Why are they paying you? Tiger beamed as they counted out a stack of 20s into his palm. I won the betting pool on when Di and Liam would officially be a couple. What? Jess screeched. That is so unprofessional. What is wrong with everyone? She whipped around to me. Did you know about this? Everyone turned to look at me. I might have heard something about it from Mary, but I wasn't convinced it was real. I certainly didn't think my friends were involved. I narrowed my eyes at Tiger. He folded the wad of cash into his pocket and then held up his hands in self-defense. You're totally my friend, but a bet is a bet. I had a feeling that y'all would hook up in Vegas and the news would get out sometime after that. My cheeks heated up and I looked away. I knew it. Thanks for being predictable. Tiger turned and walked away, his friends following suit. As they entered the hallway, Tiger's voice drifted back. I'll buy you all a round of drinks at the bar tonight. I turned back to Jess and Minx, only to encounter a cold, wet nose that was pressed into my eye socket. I pressed a hand in Moo's chest and pushed him back, but not before he ran a tongue across my face. Grabbing a napkin off the table dispenser, I scrubbed my face and carefully ran it under my eyes to catch any smeared makeup. Minx chuckled. I think I like your hair better like that. What? I ran a hand over the crown of my head and patted down the lock of damp hair that was sticking out in an odd direction. Is that better? You look great to me, Liam said. Startled, I turned in my chair. I looked at him shyly as he grabbed a chair and sat next to me, leaning over and giving me a kiss in the cheek. Hubba, hubba, am I going to have to throw cold water on you too? Minx teased. I ignored Minx and turned to Liam. I'm really sorry. I can't even tell you how embarrassed I am. Liam arched an eyebrow. You're embarrassed people know you are dating me? He said deadpan. Holy cannoli, I'm not embarrassed about dating you. I just mean a bit about announcing... You're messing with me, aren't you? I narrowed my eyes at him. He burst into laughter. Of course I'm messing with you. So you aren't embarrassed? My cheeks heated up at the thought of what I had done. He shrugged. Not really. I'm not the one that wanted to keep things secret. Jess was on the phone with your mom. She heard everything. Moo moved closer and laid his head on my shoulder. I reached up to scratch his ear. Relax. You're upsetting Moo. My mom already knew we were dating. She did? Of course. I think her exact words were, "What took you guys so long?" She's a fan of you. Oh. I was extremely flattered that his mom was pleased. She was a respected businesswoman in an industry primarily run by men, which was most industries, actually. Minx fidgeted with the need to say something. Did she know that Di's rich? Why didn't I know that? Why didn't you tell us? Liam scooted closer and pulled Moo off my shoulder to scratch behind his ears. She knew. I knew, or at least I assumed. When Mom was hiring her, she did research. Di and her ex own one of the largest tech companies in Southern California. It doesn't take a genius to assume she did well financially. I turned to look at him with surprise. It was not something we had ever discussed. I knew his mom had checked up on my credentials before she hired me, but it had never occurred to me that Liam would have heard it as well, or that they would have understood the implications in regards to my personal finances. But he was right. It didn't take a genius to take 2 and 2 and get 4. Sneaky. Minx snapped her fingers to get my attention. So it's true? I shrugged. I was raised to believe that talking about money was tacky. I can pay my bills. The money from the company is still being worked out between our lawyers, but it is pretty much a given that I'll get half. We built the company from the ground up together. In fact, it turns out that I was putting in a lot more time over the past 5 years or so. Apparently, sleeping with half of my friends really cut into his productivity. I rolled my eyes and ignored the quick sting of betrayal that twisted in my chest for a heartbeat. I patted Liam's knee. I'm glad you're not embarrassed. He grabbed my hand and squeezed it. Minx wasn't done. Hey, what about Ivana? She was pissed when she ran out of here. Is she still going to try to find Coach Natasha's killer? Is she going to kill Di to get Liam back? Will there be a big cat fight after dinner in the parking lot? She's gone. Liam checked a large, chunky watch on his arm. Or will be in a minute. What? I gently pulled my hand out of his. He clamped his hand over mine and laced his fingers through mine. She immediately came and found me to demand that I dump you so the two of us could pick up where we left off. Then, when I said I wouldn't, she told one of the Bordistan embassy people that she felt unsafe here and made arrangements to leave the center. Where will she go? He shrugged. Don't know, don't care. He dropped my hand and stood up. I need to get back to work. He leaned over and gave me a peck on the top of the head before leaving. Minx watched him leave. Wow, he's really putting his claim on you. I turned to look at Liam as he disappeared into the hall before looking back at Minx. What do you mean? Jess chuckled. He's not a touchy-feely guy, but he held your hand and managed to kiss you twice in 5 minutes. Again, my cheeks heated up, but this time with delight. I was crazy about Liam in a way that I hadn't felt since my first crush. I knew he was fond of me, but seeing others' reactions made me hope that his attraction was more than fleeting. You're going to solve the murder, even if Ivana left, right? Jess went over and filled up her water bottle at the fountain next to the coffee station. Why are you so eager about this? Aren't you normally telling me to stay out of it? She waved a hand in the air as though cleaning out a bad smell. Whatever gets the job done and suspicions off the center. Since the police basically have their hands tied behind their back. So... Got it. I might as well figure it out at this point. There are only a few people left to talk to. A surge of adrenaline coursed through me. I was probably getting addicted to the rush of solving murders. Hardly a conventional hobby, but I could worry about that later. A noise behind me pulled my attention around. Valerie, the Bordistan coach, was weaving her way through the room towards the coffee station a dozen feet away. I lowered my voice, though I couldn't hide my glee at continuing my investigation. Speaking of which, why don't you guys skedaddle till dinner? They nodded and got up to leave. I smiled at Valerie as she poured herself a cup of coffee. I gestured at the empty chair. Why don't you join me? It's Valerie, right? I'm Di. Yes, I know. Thank you. She stirred her coffee a few times and sipped the steaming liquid. I like your dog. My daughter likes this new cartoon they have on TV. There is a dog like yours, but brown, and they solve mysteries. Do you mean Scooby-Doo? Yes. Do you have that here, too? I smiled. Yes. I didn't mention that the show had been on since I was a kid. How are things going? Are you okay because of the... I tried to keep my tone casual and conversational, even though I was bringing up a murder. She nodded and sipped her coffee. Yes, we are very upset, but soldiering on, as the British say. Stiff upper lip. Very brave of you. I heard that the whole trip had been difficult. I got up and got a cup of decaffeinated coffee and stirred in a generous amount of cream. I warmed my hands in the mug before sitting back down. My whole life is difficult. The trouble started long before this trip. I drank the creamy warm coffee and rolled the aromatic liquid around in my mouth as I debated how direct I wanted to be with my questions. She seemed pretty relaxed about the topic, and I took a gamble. I heard Coach Natasha was difficult, and there was some issue with the third male on the team. I casually took another sip of my coffee and petted Moo while I waited to see her response. She sipped her coffee and watched me for a second before replying. That is right. I do not want to speak badly of her, but... She pulled her chair in closer and lowered her voice. She was not a nice woman. I thought of Orion's story about her father, but I would steer clear of that topic based on how he described her reaction. She didn't like Cheat. She leaned over even closer and whispered, It wasn't that she disliked Cheat, it's that she liked Matt. I pondered the odd emphasis she put on the word liked, then gasped. You don't mean she and Matt were... She nodded. It wasn't common knowledge, but I am sure that is what was going on. I had suspicions for a long time, and one time caught them kissing, but I couldn't prove it, and people probably wouldn't have cared. We are not as prudish about affairs as you Americans. But he was the same age as her son. Her son who was going to take over for Mikhail? I sipped and hung on her every word while trying to appear as though I weren't. Maybe, but not anymore. Mikhail was set to be fired, but these things are very political, and I think he might have kept his job or gotten a better job in a different part of the organization. He went against Natasha's decision to replace Cheat with Matt and was very vocal about it. She wanted him gone, and she usually gets her way. She smirked a little. Usually. What do you mean? She smiled and eagerly told the story. When we were in Vegas, Matt hooked up with one of the British archers. Super cute girl, his age, a much better match. He fell head over heels for her, and his roommates caught them in bed together. They were inseparable and have been texting each other constantly since. Natasha was livid, but obviously she couldn't say anything directly, but really started coming down on him, saying he was distracted, and she told me to tell him that if he didn't break up with his girl, he was uninvited from the national team. Are you serious? She nodded. Yes, and I told him, but not in the way she intended. I made sure he knew that it was only Natasha's opinion and explained what he had a right to do and not do. Personal relationships have always been allowed so long as it doesn't interfere with training. Plus, I strongly hinted that I thought he would be a stronger archer with a different coach. He is really good and has a lot of potential, but Natasha dragging him around like a plaything was not helping him. I didn't straight out say that I knew about the affair, but he might have guessed. I don't know what happened after that, but he went to talk to her directly. I don't think it went well. They were both pretty mad. When was that? Right when we arrived here. Chapter 6. I kept one eye on the Bordistan team through dinner. They broke out bottles of wine, and everyone but Chevelle grabbed a glass or 3. As the dinner progressed, their voices rose and filled the room as wine bottles emptied. Coach Natasha's absence didn't seem to be affecting any of them too deeply. A firm hand squeezed my shoulder, and I turned to look up into Liam's eyes. Hey, I'm going to take off with some of the guys. Can I talk to you for a minute? Yes, of course. I grabbed my tray and followed him to the drop-off station and into the empty hall. He stood in front of me with a very serious expression. I want you to be careful. I know you love solving these mysteries and everyone encourages you, but it isn't a game. He put a hand on my arm and pulled me into a kiss. Before our lips could even touch, a hoot and holler interrupted us. Get a room, you two. I sighed and rolled my eyes. Real mature? I yelled after the group of guys, which only elicited more laughter. I turned to Liam. I'll be careful. I have my guardian. I held out a hand, and within a few seconds, Moo was at my side. I'd rather you carried the gun I got you. I'll grab it. One of the benefits of working at the Westmound Training Center for Competitive Shooting Sports in Wyoming was that no one batted an eye at the idea you were wearing a gun, though I seldom wore mine since my archery quiver didn't fit over the holster. I just want you to be safe. You too. How are the roads out there? I tried to avoid driving at night after losing traction a few times. Brian said they are fine. He's going to drop off the car the 2 archers ran off the road in a bit. He wanted me to remind you to pass on any info you have. You'll do that and let him do his job, right? If I do that, then I'll have some free time. Maybe we could... He chuckled. They're waiting for me down there. He gestured his head toward the end of the hallway behind me. So I need to go, but I won't be late. Hit me up when you're awake tomorrow. He leaned over and kissed me quickly before jogging down the hallway. I let out a deep, contented sigh, turned to re-enter the common room, and ran face first into Chevelle. She stepped back and placed a hand over her lower stomach. I spoke up on a growing hunch, hoping surprise would work in my favor. When is the baby due? Chevelle's mouth dropped, and all the color drained from her face. She looked around to see if anyone had heard, but we were alone in the hallway. She turned back to me, her mouth opening and closing a few times before she found her voice. What are you talking about? I'm not... A sob caught in her throat, and tears started running down her face. Regret flowed over me. Oh no, don't cry. She started sobbing harder and buried her face in her hands. She blubbered so hard that I couldn't understand what she was saying. I put an arm around her shoulder and guided her down the hallway to my office. Come on, don't cry. It'll be okay. She was practically hysterical, barely able to catch her breath as I unlocked my door and guided her into a chair with her back to the window. Moo went over to her, whining and pawing at her, and she wrapped her arms around his neck and cried into his fur. I passed her a box of tissue, then closed the door. Rubbing her back, I made gentle, calming noises until her breathing slowed down. I didn't mean to upset you so badly. Really. I smiled weakly at her. No, it's not you. I've been so emotional in general. Then trying to hide it has worn me out. She cradled her stomach. I wasn't sure how she felt about her pregnancy. I carefully picked through my words before replying. It's been difficult? Yes, I'm so happy and excited, but... She burst into tears again that quickly turned into hysterical sobbing. I grabbed a bottle of water from my desk and handed it to her while patting her back. A baby is a blessing, and you are happy. What's going on? Coach Natasha said if I didn't take care of it, the organization would kick me off the team, she wailed. She guessed when we were in Vegas the same way you did. She gave me 2 weeks to deal with it or... That's terrible. Can she really do that? I took my seat back at my desk. I don't know. She trailed out the last word in a long sob. Easy. It's okay. I waited as she struggled to catch her breath. She got cheated off the team for no good reason. I don't think she could permanently kick me off the team. I was planning to take a maternity leave, but I wanted to come back eventually. I need to file with the organization, but I just found out. I don't have money for a lawyer, and if Coach Natasha had made trouble for me... I nodded. I understand, but I don't think she will now. I smiled weakly. She nodded. I should feel bad, but she wanted me to. I don't think I would be sad either. We sat quietly for a while as she sniffled before I continued. Are you feeling any better? She nodded. Yes, I didn't realize how much it was bothering me to hide things. A sharp rap on the door interrupted our conversation, causing us both to look up. Mikhail opened the door. Chevelle, it is time for... What is wrong? Chevelle sniffled and turned her back to him. He looked at me. Is she okay? His eyebrows arched in genuine concern. I stood up and addressed Chevelle. Maybe you want to talk privately? You can use my office. She nodded and dabbed at her eyes. I passed Mikhail. I'll go wait in the dining room where you ate the dinner. When you're done, can you come and get me and I'll lock up? Yes, of course. He went to my desk and sat down. After taking Moo back to the room for his dinner, and then for as long of a walk as I could handle in the darkness, I grabbed my computer and settled into the common room at the center to write up my observations for Brian. People drifted in and out, pouring themselves some coffee or huddling at the tables to chat. I flipped through my scribbled notes and copied them into a document on my computer while keeping an ear open for more information. Across the room, Tiger poked his head in, and when his eyes landed on Min sitting alone at a table, his demeanor changed. He stood up straighter and swaggered across the room toward her. I shook my head. Even without being able to hear what he was saying, I knew he was flirting. It was like watching a nature documentary as he puffed out his chest and casually touched her on the shoulder. She gestured to a chair and smiled broadly as he said something back. I repositioned my chair so I could watch while I composed my thoughts about the murder. So far it seemed that anyone could be the murderer, as they all had motives. Natasha being hit on the head behind the building could have resulted from a moment of anger, or it could have been planned to look that way. If I hadn't found her, her body might have been buried in the snow for quite a while before they looked for her. No way they could have known that Moo and I used that door for his potty breaks, could they? I had been able to figure out that most of the suspects did not have strong alibis during the time of the murder. Ivana was with Liam. Min and Vlad were together in the car on the way to the center where they slid off the road and Brian found them. The rest had their own rooms. Maybe I should start quizzing each of them on when they went to bed and who saw whom. I let out a long sigh. That was going to be tricky and would probably require a complicated timeline. That sounded like a Mary job. I would call her when I got back to the room to go over what we had so far. What are you doing? Barked a man's voice across the room. Vlad was standing over Min, glaring down at her. Mikhail stood near the doorway, eyes narrowed and carefully watching the scene. Tiger stood up, his chair falling over backwards in his haste. Hey man, easy. We were just talking. Vlad shuddered Tiger. Back off her. He turned to Min, grabbing her arm. He hauled her up out of the chair. Go to your room. Min yelped in either shock or pain. Whoa, what the? Tiger started when Vlad took a swing at him. I was half standing and started to move toward them when Mikhail stepped between them and screamed in Vlad's face in Russian. Moo barked and ran over to Tiger, who clenched his fist at his side, breathing heavy. Mikhail shoved Vlad toward the door with a few more curt words, then turned to Tiger. I'm sorry, he will be disciplined. Min chased after Vlad. Tiger worked his fists, balling them up and relaxing them. I'm more worried about Min. I saw that too. I'll take care of it. I stepped up next to them. Are you okay, Tiger? Did he hit you? Tiger gave me a crooked smile. Not with my cat-like reflexes, he teased, though his voice was not as steady as usual. I'm okay. I have to meet the guys. After he left, Mikhail turned to me. He'll be okay, right? I don't want any trouble. I think he will be okay. Is that normal? I gestured toward the direction Vlad and Min had gone. Mikhail gave me a non-committal shrug, and the set of his jaw made me think that train of discussion was closed. After a few seconds of silence, I tried a different tact. How was your conversation with Chevelle? Is she feeling better? He nodded. Yes, thank you for suggesting we talk. We're done with your office. Excuse me, I want to grab some coffee. I followed him. She was very upset. Could Coach Natasha have kicked her off the team? Possibly. She had no issue punishing those that disagreed with her. If Chevelle can't compete, then she will need to step down. There's no reason to believe that afterwards she couldn't get her scores up and join again. But Coach Natasha could have made it very difficult for her. He finished pouring his coffee and turned back to me. Like she did for Cheat? I pulled a chair out and slid it toward him before sitting on the opposite side of the table. I clicked my laptop shut to hide the open document and started petting Moo. He hesitated for a second, checking his watch before sitting down. You heard about that? Yes, Matt seemed to have earned Cheat's spot. Mikhail rolled his eyes. Such a bunch of... I like Matt, but he is full of himself. You can't come in 10th and earn the spot of someone who took 3rd. Archery's a clear-cut sport. Higher scores win. End of story. He huffed and drank his coffee. Natasha was meaner than that boss hog. He raised a fist in the worst Southern impression I'd ever heard. I'll get you, Duke, boys. I smiled. Dukes of Hazzard, yes. Boss hog sure is mean. But you helped to clear up the situation for Cheat, didn't you? Of course. I told Cheat to get a lawyer and gave them copies of all the emails where Natasha spelled out what she wanted to do, along with offering to, speak in court. Like testify, I offered. Yes, I would testify that he had earned his spot. Natasha had told Matt that he could go regardless of how the scoring went. You can't pass out team memberships like candy. You have to earn it. He slammed a hand on the table. Coffee splashed over the edge of his cup. Oh, sorry. I grabbed a napkin to mop up the errant liquid. You have a strong sense of justice. Was Coach Natasha mad when she found out about your involvement with Cheat? Furious. I waited for him to continue, and when he didn't, I prompted him. I heard they were firing you for her son? He chuckled. You have heard a lot. Yes, I had already told the archery board that if they didn't get her under control, I was quitting. I've had a job offers from other countries. I raised my eyebrow. Really? Yes, really. I'm quite a good coach. I still might move, but there might not have been a reason to. I heard they were conducting an investigation into Coach Natasha's behavior. She had a reputation of treating badly any athlete she didn't like. Half of the team had secretly filed protests against her for the things they felt were unfair. She treated them horribly. Valerie and I did what we could to help, but our power is limited. On the other hand, if she liked an athlete, they could get away with murder. I cringed at his choice of words, but he didn't seem to notice as he got up to throw away his empty cup. Thank you again, not just for accompanying Chevelle, but for getting rid of Ivana. I'll see you tomorrow. He whistled and had a skip to his step as he let Moo and I alone in the common room. I crawled onto the couch in the shared room of Mary and my unit and patted the spot next to me. Moo hopped up and circled 3 times in one direction, then 3 times in the other, before settling down on his penguin blanket. I tucked my pajama-clad legs underneath me and pulled the computer onto my lap to finish typing up my notes. After Mikhail had left the common room, I had gathered up my stuff and headed back to my room to settle in for the night. After a long, hot shower, I slipped into my fuzziest pajamas and fluffy socks that felt as if I were walking on pillows. I skimmed my notes and tried to figure out what clues I might have missed. My phone trilled with a little dancey beat that indicated Mary was calling. Hey, Mary, perfect timing. I have all my notes about the investigation typed up on the computer in front of me. Great, send them over. The sound of shuffling and grunting came over the line. I could imagine her grabbing her computer to set it in her lap. I'll do that right now. How are things on your end? I highlighted and copied the information, then dropped it into an email. As I tapped on my computer, she settled in. Great! It's been so much fun to hang out with Mom and Dad, but I'm exhausted. So many family members are here, so many questions. A bunch of them kept asking if I was dating someone, which is super depressing. I know what'll cheer you up. Guess what I announced over the center-wide loudspeaker today? Let me guess, that Liam is a great kisser? Oh man, Minx told you already? Mary chuckled. Yes, we laughed until I cried. Gee, thanks for the sympathy. Oh no, you're not genuinely upset, are you? Even though she couldn't see me, I shrugged. It's okay. I was really embarrassed, but I'll survive. Yes, you will. And this is better. You and Liam are so well suited. Ah, the email is here. Uh-huh. Do you want to talk me through this? Sure. I adjusted my computer in front of me. It's broken into 3 categories: female archers, male archers, and coaches. For the girls, Ivana has an alibi in Liam and has since left. Chevelle, she left? I chuckled. Yes. After I told her I was dating Liam, she didn't see a reason to hang around any longer. Any chance she's guilty? Liam says that she was with them the whole time, but I left her on the list just in case. They did say she had some disagreements with Coach Natasha, but that seemed par for the course. Got it. Next. Chevelle. I figured out tonight that she's pregnant. Coach Natasha found out in Vegas and told her to take care of it, or she was off the team. No, that is terrible. I know, but it's a really strong motive. Natasha gave her a deadline, and it was coming up soon, so maybe Chevelle got mad and killed her to protect her unborn baby and career. Interesting. The only other girl was Min, who was off-site with Vlad, the male archer. The story I heard was that Natasha made the camp required, but didn't tell them until the last minute. Vlad said that was an exaggeration, and they knew about the camp. Either way, they would have made it on time if they hadn't slid off the road. Oh, Vlad took a swing at Tiger. What? Why? Totally unconnected to the murder. Tiger was flirting with Min, and Vlad was not happy. My foot was falling asleep, and I adjusted my position to get the blood flow back. I think I mentioned before that Min, full nickname Minnow, is Shark's younger sister. I think that's cute, Shark and Minnow. I know. Shark is flirting with Minx, of course. He is totally full of himself. Mary let out a long sigh. That girl. I know. I was able to dig up that Shark thinks he's a real rock star, running with a tough crowd, doing drugs, and amassing a bunch of gambling debts that Natasha paid off for him. So maybe she was holding it over him? Or perhaps she wanted him to pay her back? I typed up some notes into my file. Or he did it again, and this time she refused to help him, and he got mad? Could be. She made a noise on her end that sounded as if she wanted to say something. Hey, speaking of flirting with guys, there's this archer. Oh? She had been a little blue after Orion told her that he was dating someone, or gonna start soon. But either way, he wanted to stay friends. I mean, I think Orion and I are totally compatible, but... She sighed deeply, filling the phone line with her displeasure. I know, so tell me about this guy. He's a college senior and will be at the next collegiate tournament. He asked if I wanted to go on a date while we were there. I squealed. Oh, how fun. Do you like him? He's nice enough, and I haven't been on very many dates, so yeah, I guess I'm interested in knowing more about him, I guess. I giggled at her mix of emotions. Don't sound too enthusiastic. I'll get there. I have to admit I was pretty surprised when he asked me on a date. I thought he just wanted free archery advice. I was so startled that I said yes. Maybe that was his plan. She laughed. It worked. Where did we leave off? I scanned down my list and found where we had stopped. The male archers. We discussed Shark and Vlad already, so that leaves Matt and Cheat. I'll start with Cheat because this is a bit complicated. He earned the 3rd spot on the team, but Natasha replaced him with Matt and... Did you find out why she did that? Yes, I'll get there. Cheat got a lawyer and Mikhail got involved on Cheat's side. Cheat was able to come, but then Natasha was going to get Mikhail fired and replaced by her son. She was going to make both of their lives difficult. So they both benefited from her being gone. And Matt? So the reason that Natasha was so eager to have Matt come on the trip was... Do you want to guess? When you put it like that, I'm guessing it wasn't his amazing archery ability? No, it wasn't. Though he sure seems to act like he's so gifted that he deserved a spot he didn't earn. All I can think of was that Natasha and Matt were... You know. Exactly. And that's where Matt's motives come from. He met a girl in Vegas and Natasha wasn't happy. Wow, she didn't get along with anyone. I'm surprised that it took so long for someone to kill her. Is that everyone? Everyone but Valerie, the other coach. She seemed to get along with Natasha except for something that Orion told me. Orion? How does he figure in? He called to talk about the proposal, and it turns out he knew Valerie a little. I skipped the part of the story where he mentioned that he and Valerie had flirted for a while. Valerie handled the equipment for the team, and Orion thinks that Natasha might have been able to keep her job for so long because she had some blackmail on Valerie's dad, who runs the archery organization in Bordistan. Hey, Mom, just a few more minutes. I'm almost done. Mary's voice was distant before returning to full volume. Sorry, I have to go soon. Do you know what kind of blackmail Natasha had? Orion wasn't sure, but he thinks it was related to an affair, and there was something unusual about the affair, but he couldn't really guess at what because the person didn't tell him much beyond that. So everyone had a motive. How convenient. She blew out a sigh. Do you know where everyone was? Does anybody have an alibi? No alibi? Mysteriously missing amounts of time? I haven't really asked about that. Min and Vlad were on their way to the center, so I know where they were. Ivana was with Liam. Someone said they had their own room and was alone, and that was... I scanned my computer document, then flipped through my notes to double-check. Shark. But I haven't double-checked on him. I'm not sure about anyone else. They all went to the center to watch a movie. Then it sounds like people left one at a time until just Liam and Ivana were left to hang out together. So then you can ask Liam who left when. You're brilliant. I'll do that tomorrow. I scribbled a note to myself. And I can ask Liam in detail exactly what he was talking to Ivana about while they were alone. You know you can trust him, right? Of course. I mean, I wondered, but I have to trust him, I guess. I'm coming, Dad, she yelled into the phone. Yes, trust him. I'll talk to you tomorrow after you have an idea of where everyone was during the murder. Bye. She disconnected. I started to put my phone down when it rang in my hand. After checking it, I answered. Hey, Brian. Were you sitting on the phone? It didn't even ring on my end. I just happened to be holding it. What's up? I'm dropping off that car your archers ran off the road. Do you have any information for me? I do. I'll print it off and give it to you. When will you get here? About 10 minutes. Great. We can chat while I give Moo one last walk. See you then. Chapter 7. I woke up in the morning to Moo's large paw stretched into the side of my neck. I gently moved his leg and leapt up to get ready. The previous night, Brian had given the keys to the car back to Vlad and Min, who were talking in the hallway at the time. Then he went over the list I gave him while I walked Moo before we went to bed. It was a short walk because my thin PJ pants didn't keep me warm despite my huge winter jacket and hat. As soon as I was ready this morning, I was going to text Liam. I could get into who left the center when, but mostly I planned to just be with Liam and bask in holding my boyfriend's hand. Using the word boyfriend, even inside my head, made me giggle. I had just pulled on my socks when a pounding on my door startled me. I opened the door to the sight of a sobbing, hysterical Min. She wailed at the door and was barely understandable as she tripped over her words. "Shark, you have to help. My brother. I don't understand. I know he didn't hurt anyone." "Whoa, slow down." As I moved into the hallway, the overhead lighting caught purple smudges under her eyes where the skin was puffed out. "Do you have a black eye?" Yes, I fell in the shower this morning. Then I found this note under my door. It isn't true." She shoved a note into my hands and started sobbing. I unfolded the blank sheet of paper from the notepad that each room in the center had. In block letters that were difficult to read, as each letter varied in height, slant, and form, was a letter I read aloud. "Min, I killed Coach Natasha. I'm guilty. Tell the police. Shark." "Is this his handwriting?" She sobbed harder. "I've never seen him write in English, but it doesn't look like his, and I know he didn't kill Natasha." "What room is his?" I whistled for Moo and grabbed the leash off the hook. "He's gone. Our car is gone too. You have to help me." "Hold on." I went back inside to grab my jacket, shoes, phone, notebook, and Moo. Something wasn't adding up. I was going to get to the bottom of it, but first I needed to call Brian, then Jess and Liam. I clipped the leash onto Moo, slipped on my jacket, and closed the door. "Shark couldn't have done it. He would never hurt someone. He's so kind and—" She sobbed. "I'll call my friends and they'll find him. We'll get this sorted out." We started to head outside, then I changed my mind. "Why don't you grab some tissue and meet me outside?" I would want to speak to Brian alone and share my concerns. As I headed outside, I ran to Liam. "Good morning. You won't believe—" He wrapped an arm around me and pulled me into a kiss mid-sentence. I dropped Moo's leash and laced my hands behind his neck to pull him in closer. All thoughts fled my mind as I focused on the feeling of warmth, security, and more than a hint of arousal that rolled through my body. I was safe and happy in his arms. Far too soon he pulled back. "What won't I believe?" He looked down with a crooked smile. "What?" I blinked and stared at his lips. "You said that—" I shook my head as the morning flooded through my mind. Moo barked and danced near the front door. "Let's go walk Moo behind the center and I'll tell you." He grabbed my hand, lacing his fingers through mine, and pulled me out the door towards the backside of the center. The ground was covered with another layer of snow from the night before. I couldn't believe how often it snowed. It was magical and beautiful, but I was thankful that I didn't need to drive in it. I wanted the privacy to call Brian and maybe steal another kiss from Liam. Once we were out of sight of the housing entrance, I pulled out my cell phone. "I need to call Brian, then I'll explain." He nodded and unclipped Moo's leash to let him run in the snow. I waited for Brian to answer before launching into my story. "I have news. Shark, one of the Bordistan archers, is missing, and so is the car you brought back. Min, his sister, found a note under her door, supposedly from Shark, that says he killed Natasha, but the writing looks weird, like unnatural, and it's written in English." Liam raised an eyebrow as he listened to my half of the conversation with Brian. "Slow down, Di. Do you have the note?" I stomped a foot. "No, dang it. I gave it back to her." "Di," he said, dragging it out in disappointment. "Sorry, I wasn't thinking. I'll try to get it back." "Oh, crap." I leaned around the corner of the building to peek at the entrance. Min was outside talking to some of the embassy folk. She passed over a small white sheet of paper. "I think the Bordistan embassy people have found out." They followed her back into the building. "Son of a... I'll be there right away." "No, wait. You have to find Shark. Something isn't right. Maybe he did it and is snapped, or he's being framed, or maybe he worked with a partner and the partner turned on him, or maybe..." "Easy. I've done this before. Keep everything as quiet as you can. I want to talk to you as soon as I get there." He disconnected. Apparently, the art of saying goodbye before hanging up was a fading tradition among my friends. Liam played with Moo, jumping around in the snow as Moo batted at his feet. After Moo managed to catch Liam's left foot, and he almost went face down into the snow, Liam came back and pulled me into a hug. "Quite a busy morning. I thought you were going to stay out of the murder investigation." He picked me up and spun me around before putting me down and grabbing my hand. "I was just about to text you when Min tried to bust my door down. She was hysterical, but I did want to ask you about the night of the murder. Do you remember who left when?" Hey, Di, Liam, what's going on? Jess stomped across the snow. I gave her a wave. We're just walking Moo. She shook her head and stabbed a finger at the housing building. Not with you, with the Bordistan team. The embassy people are all worked up, and when I tried to ask, they shuffled me away. I work here. How dare they? I can't wait until you solve this murder and we can get rid of them. Shark is missing and left a note under his sister's door saying he killed their coach. That's great. We can wrap this up. But why the little finger quotes around left? She reached over to Pet Moo, who was pawing at her leg. I'm not convinced he left the note. No, none of that. No second guessing. If someone wants to confess, then this is all solved. Do the police know? Yes, I called Brian. He should be here soon. She crossed her arms with a smug smile. This day is looking up. She turned to leave. Wait, do you know the room assignments for the Bordistan people? She faltered and turned back. I think so. It was 4 units. The male coach, Mikhail, had a unit to himself. The female coaches had a unit. I assume they each took a room. The female archers had a unit, 2 bedrooms, so they each had a room, at least until Min showed up, and the guys had a 2-bedroom unit. Why? No reason, just curious. See you later. I smiled broadly and waved her off. She stared at me before turning and leaving. Once she had turned the door, I swung back to Liam. Basically, almost everyone but Matt and Cheat had their own bedroom. I remember Shark yelling that he refused to share his room, so he must have stayed alone until Vlad showed up. Then Vlad was going to share a unit with Mikhail. I needed to double-check everyone's alibi. Do you remember who left the movie in what order? What? Liam asked. I slowed down and started over. The night Coach Natasha was killed. Do you remember the order that people left the center to go to bed? He shrugged. Not really. I was checking my phone to see if you were done with your proposal yet. Why don't we take a walk and not talk about murder? Oh? He squeezed my fingers. I'd like to take you on a date this weekend. We can talk about that instead. I smiled up at him. That would be nice. Minx leaned in close in the crowded common room. I can't believe Shark confessed to killing his coach. We had just finished breakfast, where the rumor about the note and Shark being missing from the center had circulated quickly through the staff of the center. Jess had hurried everyone who wasn't on the Bordistan team out after breakfast, except Minx and I had circled back to spy. The Bordistan team had the opposite corner of the room, where the embassy people kept watch over them. I had tried to swing by and casually poke around, asking Min how she was feeling, but a stern-faced, pantsuit-clad embassy lady had intercepted me and shuffled Moo and me away. I slowly poured myself a cup of coffee, the excuse we were using for hanging around. I don't think he did, or at the very least, there has to be more to the story. Did he say anything to you yesterday that could have been a clue? She shrugged and slowly added a sugar cube to her coffee. Not really. He was concerned about his sister, kind of angry at her. What do you mean? I took a small sip of the coffee and scowled. The bitter black liquid was scalding hot. I added a generous amount of half and half from the carafe stuck in a bowl of ice. We were flirting after dinner, and I said something about it being cool that both he and his sister were such great archers. He made a funny face and said something about her being a great archer with lousy taste in men. He grumbled about needing to sit her down and talk to her. What did he mean? What happened next? I looked across the room and found Min quietly crying. The purple marks under her eyes had bloomed into 2 black smudges. I changed the topic. I was trying to flirt, not conduct a family counseling session. I didn't need to hear another lecture about girls picking the wrong men. She rolled her eyes. I laughed and turned back to look at the Bordistan team, but Brian caught my eye from the hallway. He waved me over, then ducked out of sight. Minx, stay here and keep an eye on them. I'll be right back. I casually strolled across the room while muttering to Moo. Do you need a walk? Okay, buddy, just a quick one. It was an award-winning acting job. I stepped into the hallway and ducked around the same corner Brian had. He fell into step beside me. He wasn't in uniform and had a baseball cap pulled down over his face. What did you find out? He checked over his shoulder, then turned back to me. We found Shark, as you call him. He was in the same rental car that I returned last night. It was off the road and Shark was in pretty bad shape. A couple of ranchers spotted the car and called it in a few minutes after you called me. By the time we got there, the scene was pretty trampled up. We haven't had a chance to talk to him, but we're a bit suspicious about the accident. It looks staged. Staged? How can you tell? I may not be an expert on homicides, at least not yet, but I have seen my fair share of cars slide off the road in winter. There are certain parts of the road that tend to ice up more. If a car slides off the road from here to town, 9 out of 10 times they slide off where Vlad and Min slid off a few nights ago. Shark could have slid off the road where we found the car, but the road wasn't icy, and I can't think of the last time someone ran off the road there. Maybe a deer or elk jumped in front of the car and he jerked the wheel, or perhaps he was overcome with guilt. Could be an animal, but something seems off. They are out there giving it a thorough once-over, but my gut says that it wasn't an accident. Some of Shark's injuries don't look like they happened in the car. Lots of little things, but that got me to thinking about the accident a few days ago where Vlad and Min slid off the road. I didn't give it a lot of thought then, but I stopped on the way here and something was bothering me. Don't leave me hanging. What was it? I leaned in to catch his every word. When a car spins out, they can be facing any direction when they exit the road. I assumed that they were on the way to the center, but that's only because of what they said they were doing. But looking at the pictures I took that night, combined with what I know about that stretch of road, it would make a lot more sense if they were driving from the center back to town. I rolled it over in my mind. Maybe they were lost and missed the entrance? He nodded along. Yeah, that could be the case, though there isn't a lot else out there. But let's take the opposite point of view. We're looking for a killer after all. They told me they were driving from town, but I think if they were going back to town, that means they lied. Why would they lie before they knew about the murder? If they lied, there was a reason. The only reason I can imagine right now is that they wanted an alibi for the time of the murder, which means they already knew about the murder, which means that they were involved. But that all hinges on them lying about which way they were driving and why. Can we prove any of it? Maybe, but probably not. And even if I did, what does that mean? Did they kill her? Maybe they saw who killed her. Maybe they got into a fight with her and left. Who knows? Maybe they were just turned around. How does that connect to Shark driving off in a rental car? Was he with someone or alone? Did someone threaten him and he ran off? Was he protecting his sister? We don't know. I nodded along. I'm loving brainstorming with you, but I have to wonder why. Normally you are telling me to stay out of it. He kept casting his eyes over my shoulder and behind him. I have a plan and you're a part of it. You up for that? I bounced on the tip of my toes. Absolutely. What's up? Because of all the embassy people, they aren't letting us talk directly to the archery team. But you can. We'll get this untangled in time, but I think the right word right now could blow this whole thing open. The news about Shark is still working its way through the chain of command. But maybe you could go in and share some info. Stir things up a little. I can stand by the coffee station with Minx and listen in. I pressed a hand against my stomach to still the butterflies inside. I can do that. What do you want me to say? I checked my watch and paced in the hallway for one more minute. I was supposed to give Brian at least 5 minutes before I came in and addressed the Bordistan team. I had gone to the bathroom, splashed some water on my face, and run through what I was supposed to say. I took one last deep, slow breath and entered the common room. I kept my face toward the Bordistan team, but from my peripheral, I checked that Brian was in place. He was hunched over at a table with Minx. They appeared to be in conversation, and no one from the Bordistan group was looking at them. Step 1 of the plan was already working. Min, I need to talk to you. I called out before the embassy folks could stop me. A gigantic man the size of a dump truck in a suit stepped in front of me. Please go away. No one can speak to them right now. I narrowed my eyes at him and spoke loudly enough that I knew the entire group would be able to hear, even with the man blocking me with his formidable frame. It's about Shark. It's a small town, and you know how gossip gets around, but I'm sure the police will eventually tell Min. Moo sniffed the man's groin, causing him to jump out of the way. I swept past him, and Min ran to me. She grabbed my arms, tears already rolling down her face. Where is he? Is he okay? The rest of the team got up and moved around. You need to sit down. I pulled out a chair. The police think that he drove away and either lost control of your car or, more likely, out of guilt, drove off the road. He's in the hospital and doesn't look good. I'm so sorry, but they think he killed your coach. A majority of the group looked sad, but not surprised. If they knew about the note, then they had probably come to the same conclusion. Min, on the other hand, went completely pale. No. She brought a quivering hand to her mouth. How bad is it? Will he wake up? Tears rolled down her face. I rubbed her shoulder. They don't know, but it is pretty bad. I wanted to see if she would say more. When she didn't, I gave her another little push. I can see if you can go see him, but the police might not let you because he's a murder suspect. No, she screamed, her eyes big and wild. He didn't kill anyone. He couldn't have. I saw him leave the center and go straight to his room. He didn't even see Coach Natasha that night. Valerie and Chevelle exchanged a look, and Valerie kneeled next to Min. What are you saying? Min ignored her and grabbed my hand. You know that policeman. Tell him that Shark couldn't have done it. They'll believe you. The embassy people were conferring and looked ready to interfere. I grabbed her other hand. And tell them what? Why couldn't it be your brother? Moo started barking, and I turned to see the brick wall in a suit approaching me. I turned back to Min and urged her on. If you know something to help your brother, you have to tell me. She sobbed and cried through her words. I saw him that night. We came here and saw Coach Natasha. Vlad was so mad at her. He went out to talk to her behind the building. I saw my brother leave the center and go to his room. Then Vlad came back alone and said that we were leaving and not to tell anyone. Valerie bit off something in Russian, an angry exclamation, and waved away the embassy people as they got closer. Min continued through her tears. He said that he only talked to Coach Natasha, and then she was dead. I told him last night that I was scared, and then he... She started to hyperventilate, but pushed out the rest of the words. He hit me. I found my brother and told him, and he went to talk to Vlad, and now he's missing. She let out a long wail. I looked around to find Vlad and realized he was gone. Where's Vlad? Everyone looked around. I looked to Brian, but the seat next to Minx was now empty. I flopped onto the couch and dialed Mary. It had been a crazy few hours, but I had gathered enough information to piece it together. Mary picked up the line and didn't bother to even say hi before launching into talking. Geez, oh, Pete, you won't believe what I just found out. Guess who was banned from the European Pro Archery Circuit because he took a swing at one of the judges? I chuckled. Vlad? Yes, how did you know? It's a hunch. Do you want to guess who was arrested for murder and attempted murder? She gasped. No, Vlad? Wait, attempted murder? What happened? I ran through the morning, mentioning Min showing up with black eyes, Brian's suspicion about the car crashes, the note, Shark's hospital visit, and lastly, my part in the reveal. At that point, everyone realized that Vlad had snuck out. Brian had been watching and followed him out. Where would he have gone? There's nothing around the center. I know, but they always try to run, don't they? Brian caught him and called him back up. By that point, I guess the police were able to untangle some of the bureaucratic red tape with the Bordistan embassy, especially with Min telling everyone that Vlad did it and that Vlad was trying to frame her brother. How did Shark end up in a car accident? They're not totally sure, but what I heard from Liam, who talked to someone, was that they think Vlad hit Shark and thought he was dead. He drove Shark out about a mile from the center, you know, where that bend with the big drop-off is, and did something with the car and hoped that no one would find the car for a while. Then must have walked back and written the note and slipped it underneath the door. Or at least that's the most popular opinion right now. That makes sense. Do they know what happened between him and the coach? I pulled a foot underneath me. Min said that Vlad had been fuming the whole drive up and about exploded when he saw Natasha walking across the parking lot that night. Min thinks he decided to kill her right then. He was really calm when he came back to the car, which is why she believed him later when he said he hadn't killed Coach Natasha. Oh, that's scary. I know. The whole team is packed up to move to a hotel in town until this gets sorted out. Jess is happy they're leaving. I can't blame her. I'll be back in a few days, so try to avoid any more murders until then. And when I get back, we need to be seriously training. No more sleuthing. I laughed. You say that now. There was a knock at the door. Hey, I gotta go. Text you later. I dropped the phone on the couch and went to answer the door. When I swung it open, Liam was casually leaning against the doorframe. I figured I'd walk my girlfriend to lunch. I blushed with pleasure at the word girlfriend and held out a hand to him. I would love that, but lunch doesn't start for an hour. He stepped into the room and pulled me into an embrace. I think I know how we can spend that time. The End. Death from Abroad. Target Practice Mystery 6. For more information about Nikki Haverstock's books, please go to nikkihaverstock.com.